At the beginning, the scene showed a classroom where a boy was sitting on his seat while reading a book, thinking that he liked this seat because he could quietly read his light novels alone. He noticed that the extroverts were as loud as ever, hanging out again that day, and thought that if he had to hang out with people like them, he would rather remain a loner introvert. He felt that his seat was the best that day too. His name was Ryouta Izumiya, and he thought that being surrounded 2 or even 3 layers deep by the rest of the class made this corner seat truly a god-tier seat. He resolved that he had to savor every single second of it. Suddenly, someone called out for everyone's attention, saying they were doing seat changes that day. Ryouta was stunned and seemed panicked, thinking, "Wah," with a panicked face. The girls in front of him said to each other that it was the first time that year, and another girl mentioned that she had heard the class representative, Kuroki, had asked the teacher. Ryouta thought angrily, wondering why Kuroki had to mess things up, thinking that for a loner like him, seat changes were nothing but high risk with no reward. With an angry face, a girl announced that she had posted the new seating chart and told everyone to go take a look. A girl bumped into Ryouta, saying she was next to Suzuki and woohooing before apologizing. Ryouta, stunned, went to see the board and wondered where his seat was. He said in shock that his seat was in the center, thinking maybe he was surrounded by fellow introverts too. He was stunned to see that he was sitting in the middle of 3 names and wondered why someone like him, an introvert, of all people, had ended up there. He clenched his teeth, thinking that being surrounded by 3 S-tier beautiful girls was, no matter how he looked at it, the worst seat possible. With a scared face, he overheard 2 boys saying they were jealous, with one saying he would love to get close to those 3 girls. Ryouta thought that they were the center of the class, the undisputed cast top, and all he wanted was to sit quietly in a corner and enjoy his light novels. But to him, this was nothing short of hell. That said, he noticed the girl next to him, whom he had never seen before. At that moment, a girl said something, and Ryouta thought that the embodiment of cute, airy Miyama was so sly and wondered why someone like her was sitting in front of him, thinking this was the worst. Airi complimented another girl's nails, saying they were so pretty, to which the other girl replied that she didn't do anything special but thanked her. Ryouta thought that the downer-type gyaru, Yuria Ichinose, was intimidating, and he feared they would get the wrong idea about him. Sure, he liked big boobs and curvy bodies, but in real life, gyarus were intimidating. Yuria remarked that their seats were pretty close, and Airi agreed, wondering if Rui-chan arranged it so they would be near each other. Airi called out to Rui-chan, and Ryouta thought that Rui Kuroki was the mastermind behind the seat change. Rui then greeted Ryouta, saying it had been a long time and that they were neighbors starting that day, introducing herself politely. Ryouta, with a scared face, replied nervously, greeting her back. Rui smiled, and Airi seemed confused, while Yuria noted that the teacher was coming. The teacher said that the seat change was finished but warned them not to get too excited since it was only allowed because the class rep, Kuroki, insisted on it. The teacher added that seat changes were pointless and that they did not plan on allowing another one. Ryouta, with a tense face, thought in shock whether he was really stuck with that seat until the end of the second year. The teacher concluded homeroom. Ari asked Ri-chan if she knew Ryouta, to which Ri replied that they were in the same class back in middle school. Harry reacted with a small, heh. Ryouta, while reading his book, wondered if Kuroki even remembered him, and felt annoyed that he was curious about it. He told himself to calm down and decided to read his light novel. Suddenly, Ari exclaimed that it was a dirty picture book, which stunned and scared Ryouta, who told her to shut up. Yuria stared at Ryouta, making him think that she was totally judging him. Yuria then changed the topic, saying she was going out to buy sushi that day and asking the others about their plans. Ryouta thought, with a smile, that it was a girl talk and felt thankful that the teasing was over. Rui mentioned she was free, since track and field had the day off, and asked Airi about her plans. Airi, with a tense face, apologized, saying she would pass that day because her boyfriend wanted to go to Starbucks after school. Yuria accepted it, saying it couldn't be helped, and Airi apologized again. Ryouta thought how enviable it was, realizing that a bottom feeder like him had nothing to do with that. Later, Ryouta was seen walking on the streets, thinking about what a day it had been and how the jealous stares from other guys were painful. He saw a boy and girl walking together, with the girl complaining the boy was pervy, and Ryouta, annoyed, thought, damn normies. However, he told himself that he had his beloved world of manga and light novels, and that day was the release day of the LN he wanted. At the bookstore, he saw that his novel was out of stock. The staff apologized, saying it was currently out of stock. Ryouta, in a soulless state, replied that he understood, thinking it was to be expected since it was his favorite web novel, Oppai Sway, or Boob Sucker, and that it couldn't be helped as it was a hot title. He called another bookstore, introducing himself and asking if they had that light novel in stock, feeling embarrassed, saying its name out loud. The girl on the line sounded unusually cheerful and familiar to him, and he wondered if he was imagining things. She confirmed they had 4 copies left. Ryouta thanked her, saying he would head over right away, and she replied enthusiastically. Ryouta was stunned, thinking they should hang up after a customer call, and wondered if it was a new part-timer. When he reached the store, he told the staff that he was the one who called earlier. The girl, while carrying books, confirmed about the book but then noticed him, stunned, saying it was the boy who sat beside her. It turned out to be Airi, who was blushing and seemed tense. Ryouta was also tense and decided to pretend he didn't see anything, turning to leave. Suddenly, Airi called him and grabbed his shoulder, asking if he planned to tell everyone that she had a part-time job. Ryouta was confused, and Airi explained that she had gotten the school's permission and was working within allowed hours, and tearfully begged him not to tell anyone. Another girl interrupted, telling them that lovers' quarrels were against the rules during shifts, making Airi blush, and Ryouta thought that at least she should correct her, as he wasn't her boyfriend. The girl told Airi to take a break in the break room, and Airi wiped her tears, saying okay. In the staff room, Airi apologized, saying it was her fault. Ryouta replied that he was sorry too, thinking with a blushing face that it was too close, and that a loner like him couldn't handle being alone at such a distance with a girl. Airi tearfully confessed that she was scared of being called poor again like back then. Ryouta, with a tense face, asked what she meant by poor. In tears, Airi explained that her family was really poor. Her dad had passed away when she was little, and her mom raised her alone. She didn't get any allowance and had many tough times. Ryouta thought she had it rough, more than he expected. Airi continued, saying that back in middle school, when her friends started wearing makeup, she was the only one who couldn't keep up, making her feel left out and miserable. She worked hard to save money and studied fashion and makeup until she could become the cute version of herself. But to keep up that cute version, she had to face the reality that it cost money. Ryouta asked if that was why she got a job, and Airi confirmed it. Ryouta thought that getting a part-time job didn't automatically mean she was poor. Airi added that it didn't bother her if people called her poor anymore, as she had gotten used to it, but she absolutely didn't want Yuria or Rui, who became her friends back in first year, to find out. That was why, with tears in her eyes and leaning close to Ryouta, she pleaded with him. Ryouta, blushing, told her honestly that he really respected her. Airi was stunned, and Ryouta explained that he had never even bought anything with money he earned himself, so compared to him, she was way more mature. He added that he could never look down on someone like her and absolutely wouldn't. Ryouta thought to himself what the heck he was saying and turned to see Airi smiling with a blush while wiping her tears, saying that he was actually pretty sweet. She giggled softly while smiling, and Ryouta, blushing, asked what she meant. Airi got up, saying she should get back to work. Ryouta asked in surprise, and Airi reminded him that he came there to buy that boob, whatever book. Ryouta was later shown kneeling, thinking he should have been able to buy it, but his oppai sway was gone. Suddenly, Airi came close to his ear, asking if he found the book he was looking for. Ryouta, shocked and blushing, replied that it was sold out. Airi laughed, and Ryouta smiled while thinking that was why he couldn't deal with extroverts. Airi then slid a book to him, and Ryouta, stunned, saw that it was oppai sway. Airi asked if he wanted it, saying that when he called, she set a copy aside for him, while smiling. Ryouta was stunned and blushing, thinking that Airi was seriously an angel. Airi then asked what her thank you was for reserving it, making Ryouta bow and thank her very much. Airi repeated her question, and Ryouta was stunned, asking, "Huh?" Airi explained that she set it aside out of a customer service spirit, so in return, he should treat her to something, as that was the deal. Ryouta, shocked, listened as Airi said that now that he had seen her true nature, she might as well say that she was a pretty straightforward girl. She wrapped her hand around his arm, telling him to treat her to something at the cafeteria the next day. Ryouta, blushing, thought that she was definitely not an angel but a little devil. Airi then asked his name, and he told her it was Izumiya Ryouta. Airi replied, calling him Ryouta, and said she would be looking forward to lunch break the next day, smiling and blushing. Ryouta was stunned and blushed as Airi smiled slyly. Someone called Airi to the register, and she replied that she was coming, leaving while saying, "See ya." Ryouta, with a tense face, thought in shock that having lunch with Airi Miyama, one of the queens of the school caste hierarchy, was totally insane no matter how he looked at it. Ryouta Izumiya was sitting at his desk in the classroom, thinking that after the seat change, he ended up surrounded by beautiful girls, which sucked for him. Somebody from behind said they were jealous of Izumiya's seat, wondering why that otaku got such a spot when he was only into 2D stuff. With a tense face, Ryouta told himself to just focus on his light novel. Then he noticed legs in front of his desk and thought, Looking up, he saw Yuria Ichinose staring at him. He wondered in shock why the gloomy gal Ichinose Yuria was looking at him. Then she said she remembered something. With a scared expression, Ryouta wondered what that was supposed to mean, and replied with a confused, "Huh?" Yuria then greeted Eri with a, "Morning," and Eri replied back. Eri looked at Ryouta and winked, causing him to blush and think that it made them look like they were secretly dating. Yuria asked Eri why she winked, and Eri said it was for no reason. Ryouta, shaking, put his head down on his desk, wondering what that wink actually meant. Later, Eri suggested they eat, and Ryouta replied, "Thanks for the food." Eri said it was tasty while eating, and thanked him for treating her, apologizing for picking something kind of expensive. Ryouta said it was fine, as it was to thank her for yesterday. Eri then asked if he noticed people staring at them. The classmates were whispering among themselves, jealous that the two of them were eating together. Ryouta thought he couldn't blame them. While eating, Eri asked Ryouta if he was talking with Yuria that morning, mentioning that it was rare to see Yuria talking with a guy. Ryouta replied that Yuria had said, "I remembered it." Eri asked what she meant by that, but Ryouta said that's what he wanted to know too, feeling like it was a pretty high bar for him to ask. Eri suggested that she could ask Yuria for him, but Ryouta declined, saying it wouldn't be fun that way. With a smile, Eri offered to tell him Yuria's secret hangout so he could ask her directly, calling it Operation Get Close to Yuria. Ryouta was stunned and asked what she meant, but Eri told him she thought Yuria wanted to be friends, and since their seats were close together, they should all try to get along. Blushing, Ryouta suggested that maybe Eri should act as the mediator instead, but Eri refused, saying it would be boring that way. Ryouta thought to himself that she was a little devil. Later, Ryouta was standing in front of a building, thinking that this was Ichinose's secret spot. He guessed if she was a gal, maybe it would be the photo booth area. Tilting his head, he noted she wasn't there, but then he heard some clacking sounds. Turning around with a tense face, he saw a girl at the arcade claw machine, thinking about her nails as she pressed buttons. The girl was saying, "Milk tan," and Ryouta noticed her chest and her thighs and realized it was Ichinose Yuria. She was frustrated that it wasn't going well, and Ryouta thought she was really struggling with it. With a tense face, he wondered if a gal like her was going after an erotic bishoujo anime figure for resale. Blushing, he thought, "No way, resale." Suddenly, Yuria turned around, and both of them said, "Ah," in surprise. Blushing, Yuria accused him of trying to get dirt on her and expose her for going after a figure, asking if he planned to ruin her. Ryouta frantically denied it, saying he actually came there to win that figure himself. She was surprised and asked if he was really trying to win it too. Covering her mouth with her hand, Ryouta asked why she was trying to get that figure and whether she was planning to give it to someone. Blushing, she stayed silent, so Ryouta asked if she was planning to resell it. Angrily, she grabbed his collar and told him not to lump her in with sleazebags, shouting that she was trying to win it herself so she wouldn't have to buy it from resellers. Ryouta thought, crap, realizing that resale might have been a trigger word for her. Yuria, frustrated, asked if he was even listening. Ryouta dropped a coin into the machine and told her to let go of his hands so he could focus. Blushing, she asked what he was doing. He told her he had trained solely to win bishoujo figures, thinking claw machines were meant to be won with a gentle touch. Dropping another coin, he declared that with this, he won the figure. Yuria blushed, calling him amazing and seriously praising him. Smiling, Ryouta handed her the figure, and Yuria was surprised, asking if he was sure since he was the one who won it. Ryouta said he was only able to win it because she had worked so hard on the machine and that it belonged to her. She was stunned and asked if he wasn't going to make fun of her for being a high school girl into erotic anime, saying no matter how you looked at it, it was weird. Ryouta admitted he was surprised she liked an erotic anime where breast milk shoots out, making her flinch. But he continued saying he didn't think there was anything wrong with proudly loving what you love. He explained he didn't even use a cover for his light novels anymore because he wasn't ashamed of what he loved, saying that's what it meant to be an otaku. He added that while there was nothing wrong with hiding your hobbies, if you love something, you shouldn't put it down yourself. Yuria was stunned by his words. Ryouta thought to himself, what the hell am I saying? I'm bottom of the barrel. He then suggested they both forget everything that happened that day, but Yuria refused, saying she didn't want to because she was an otaku too. Ryouta was shocked and asked if she was really an otaku. Yuria explained she wasn't trying to hide it, but it was hard to be open about it in front of Eri and Rui. Thinking about Rui and Eri, Ryouta listened as Yuria explained that she was tired of losing close friends over her hobby, so she kept it hidden. She then stared at some girls, and Ryouta apologized, thinking maybe he had asked something out of line. Yuria confirmed his name was Izumiya, and Ryouta replied yes, thinking she didn't remember it. She came closer, put her hand on his shoulder, and told him not to tell anyone she was an otaku, especially not Airi or Rui. Blushing, Ryouta promised he wouldn't tell anyone. Relieved, Yuria went to her bag and said that meant she didn't have to hide it from him. She took out a book and smiled, revealing that what she remembered that morning was actually the book's title, Opai, Sweet. She asked for his line, deciding that he would be her partner for otaku talk from now on. Ryouta protested that it was too sudden, but Yuria threatened that if he didn't go along with her, she would tell everyone he had been eyeing her thighs lewdly, exposing him to everyone. Blushing, Ryouta thought, she knows. Yuria laughed and said that from now on, that would be their relationship, smiling and blushing as Ryouta blushed in defeat. While walking out together, Yuria asked if Oppai Sui ran on the web too, since its follower count was insane. Ryouta confirmed it, thinking he ended up forming a slightly different relationship with Ichinose compared to Miyama, noting that she was one of the top-ranking gyarus in their class. That night at his house, Ryouta lay on his bed thinking about how surprising it was that Ichinose was an otaku. His phone beeped, and it was a message from Airi asking if he had asked Yuria about that morning. Ryouta thought he should cover up Ichinose's secret and replied vaguely. Airi messaged back, saying it was probably nothing big and to forget it, then added that since she told him about Yuria, she kind of wanted to drink the new frappe from Staba as thanks. Ryouta was shocked, thinking she got a taste with the katsu curry, and replied that if it was next week, it was okay. Then his phone beeped again with a message from Ichinose thanking him for today, and suggesting they watch a movie next time as thanks for the figure. Ryouta, scared, said there was no way he could go to that. Blushing, he thought about how he had a new frappe with Miyama and a movie with Ichinose, just the two of them, and how something like that happening in his gloomy life was unbelievable. He lay down thinking this was what they called a ryaju. Ryouta concluded that it was all thanks to the seat change arranged by Kuroki Ruri, wondering if it was deliberate or just a coincidence. If it was intentional, he questioned why someone like him, a gloomy nobody, got placed in such a prime seat. Thinking back to how they went to the same middle school but never even talked, he thought there was no way someone like her would even notice a speck like him. Meanwhile, at Rui's house, she was looking at a photo of Ryouta with a smile saying, hee hee. Ryo was yawning in class, feeling sleepy. He thought he had stayed up pretty late last night, chatting with Ichinose on Lime. As he dropped his umbrella in the stand, he thought about how she totally changed when it came to otaku talk. Suddenly, he heard someone say, ah, and turned his head to see Rui, who greeted him brightly, saying good morning and commenting that it was raining today. Ryo, startled, replied with an awkward, ah, yeah, and thought to himself whether Kuroki was always this chatty. Then Eri arrived, greeting Rui cheerfully, while Yuria also greeted Rui from behind Eri. Rui asked Yuria if she had felt lonely and called Eri to walk to school with her. Yuria blushed and called Rui an idiot, explaining that Airi's umbrella broke, so she had to share with her. Airi teased Yuria to just be honest already. As Yuria glanced at Ryo and blushed, Ryo thought he had better make sure no one found out about yesterday. Eri asked Yuria what was wrong, and Yuria tried to brush it off, saying it was nothing. She said she would go ahead, and Rui, smiling, said she saw. Eri asked Rui if something was wrong, but Rui told her it was nothing and suggested they get going too. Rui turned to Ryo and smiled, making Ryo nervous. Later, Ryo sat at his seat with his head down, thinking in panic about Rui's smile that morning. He wondered if she had figured out what was going on between him and the two girls. He recalled Rui was a certified genius who dominated academics and sports, and that only Eri and Yuria could talk to her as equals. He feared that if she found out he knew her friend's secrets, she would interrogate him to protect them. He panicked, thinking she might have been probing him for info, and said to himself that he didn't get it. His phone beeped with a message from Eri, asking him to have lunch in the empty classroom on the third floor since Yuria and Rui were busy and she was alone. He responded with, Later in class 3 to 8, Eri called out to Ryo, asking what he and Rui had been talking about that morning. Ryo replied bluntly, asking if she thought he would just run his mouth about their secret. Eri denied that, saying what she wanted to know was why Rui was in such a good mood that morning. Ryo asked if she was in a good mood, and Airi explained that Rui always seemed deadpan when talking to boys, like she was looking down on them. But with Rio, she actually looked like she was having fun. She said Rui had been like that even on the day of the seat change. Airi sighed and declared that Rui totally liked Rio. Rio was shocked and questioned her logic, saying he and Rui had literally zero interaction before the seat change. Airi, blushing, smiled and said they went to the same middle school, so maybe Rui secretly fell for him back then. Rio thought, exasperated, about what this bomb-throwing girl was even saying. Airi suddenly smirked and said she got a great idea. Rio thought he had a bad feeling about it. Later, Rio was at the exit, thinking maybe he should just go straight home today. He wondered what the good thing Miyama mentioned was. As he looked for his umbrella, he realized it was missing. Someone from behind said, "Ah, you finally showed up," and Rio turned around, stunned, to see Rui holding his umbrella. Rui said she had been waiting for him. Rio asked if that was his umbrella, and Rui explained that Eri said she had a date and really needed an umbrella, so Rui lent her hers. Rui realized it was Rui who had lent it. Rui continued, saying this time it was, Rui-chan can't go home without it, implying Eri had asked him for help again. Rui apologized for dragging him into it. Rio understood the situation but wondered how she knew that umbrella was his. Rui asked if they should head out together since they were going the same way. Rio nervously agreed. Rui commented that he had been using this umbrella since middle school and opened it. Rio wondered how she even knew that. Rui remarked that the umbrella was pretty big, and Rio offered to hold it. Rui smiled sweetly and stepped under it, saying, "Excuse me for intruding," which made Rio blush hard. Rui suddenly asked if he had a girlfriend recently. Rio, stunned and blushing, didn't answer immediately. Rui pressed further, asking if it was Yuria or Eri. Rio panicked, denying it frantically and saying there was no way a bottom-tier introvert like him could be dating anyone. Rui analyzed his reaction sharply, noting his obvious panic, sudden fast talking, and shaking hands, and concluded confidently that he was lying. Rio thought she was like a detective with her sharp deduction skills. Rui asked him why he had lunch with Eri in the cafeteria yesterday and why he was lying to her. She pressed him to explain how they got close. Rio, with a panicked face, said he was just thanking Miyama because he ran into her at a store the other day and she let him have something he really wanted. Rui asked again if he was sure there was nothing between him and Eri, and Rio assured her there wasn't. Rui stared at him, then smiled and blushed slightly, saying she was relieved. Rio looked tense, wondering where this was coming from all of a sudden as Rui explained that she was always a perfectionist in academics and sports, and couldn't relax unless she met everyone's expectations perfectly. She said she was glad he didn't become Aries and felt relieved. Rio, stunned, asked what that was supposed to mean. Rui, standing close to him, said that back in middle school, he was the only boy who never confessed to her. Rio, surprised, asked if he was really the only one, and what about guys who already had girlfriends. Rui replied that they only chose someone else because she turned them down, comparing them to people settling for cheap cuts when they really wanted Chateaubriand. She said love was cruel, but Rio didn't even look at the meat at all, which set him apart from all the other predators. Rui asked him if he actually liked her too but was just too embarrassed to confess. As she moved her face close to his, Rio blushed and said he didn't feel that way. Rui pressed her breasts against his chest, asking him to say he liked her. Rio, caught off guard, tapped his back against the wall and tried to leave, but Rui told him they were going to play a game. She wouldn't move from that spot until he confessed. Rio shouted that it was ridiculous and tried to leave, but Rui teased that leaving a girl alone in the downpour was cruel. With her face close to his, Rio blushed and thought that even if it was Kuroki, being forced to confess like this felt wrong. He told her to stop messing with him, saying she wouldn't be happy hearing a confession forced out of him. Rui grabbed his fingers and said, while blushing, what if she told him she would be happy? Rio blushed and asked, "Huh?" Rui, holding his hand, said she meant it, and ever since that day, she had always, suddenly, Yuria appeared behind Rui, scolding her for flirting and telling her to pick someone else. Yuria asked why Rui was walking home with Rio, reminding her that Eri borrowed Rui's umbrella, so Rui and she agreed to go home together instead. Yuria said she told Rui to wait while she finished up committee work, so why was Rui under Izumiya's umbrella? Rio thought it was weird since what Kuroki said earlier didn't match this. Rui stared at Rio, and Yuria told her to come along. Rui agreed, and they left together. Rio sat on the ground, thinking he wasn't totally sure what just happened, but it seemed Rui's whole game got cancelled thanks to Ichinose. He decided to head home too. His phone beeped, and it was a message from Yuria apologizing for acting cold earlier, saying it was just for Rui's sake and calling him, "my bad." Rio replied that she really didn't have to worry about that. Suddenly his phone beeped again with another message, and his face turned pale. Rui had messaged him, saying, since they got closer, she added him as a friend and told him to keep what happened earlier a secret from everyone. She warned him that if he spilled the beans, who knew what might happen. Rui then added, calling him by name, that she would make him fall for her, so he should just sit back and wait. Rio, scared, thought that was the opposite of reassurance. It was terrifying. His phone turned off, and he sighed, thinking why three beautiful girls were going after an introverted otaku like him. He realized that just like that, he found himself unwillingly holding onto the secrets of three of his class's most popular girls, and his peaceful life was undoubtedly completely doomed all because of a single seat change. The scene shifted to Ryouta walking down the street, thinking aloud how a gloomy otaku like him spent his time after school, deciding that he would head over to Animates. As he walked into his house, he continued thinking that people would probably assume he just binged anime and games alone in his room. Inside his room, Ryouta sat down on his chair and muttered that he needed to think of a reply online. He looked at his phone and saw a notification saying he had received an image from Rui. Almost immediately, another message arrived from Yuria, telling him that he would come with her to see Chichi-kun's movie, right? Then another message popped up from Airi, excitedly saying that she had found a tadpole on her way back from work, and that it was gross cute. Once again, a notification appeared saying he had received an image from Rui. Ryouta hesitated, wondering whether his reply would sound kind of gross. Another message from Yuria followed, exclaiming that it was a rainbow. Then, yet another notification appeared, another image from Rui. Ryouta frowned, wondering what was going on with Rui today, and hoping it wasn't something crazy. When he finally opened the image, he froze. It was a photo of Rui wearing a tracksuit, her stomach exposed, taken on a highway. Rui asked what he thought, and whether she was cute. Ryouta blushed hard and reacted internally, thinking it was outrageous. Rui followed up by saying that he could save the photo if he wanted, that she wouldn't know how he used it, and that he shouldn't worry. Ryouta immediately decided he would mute Rui for a while. Even so, he couldn't believe that Rui, of all people, was actively trying to seduce him. Thinking back, he recalled something Rui had said on the way home and wondered what she meant by that day. He questioned whether something had happened back in junior high. Realizing Rui might know something about it, he decided he would ask her tomorrow. The next day, the scene shifted to the school rooftop. Ryouta called out to Tanaka, and she responded with an exaggerated laugh, greeting him. He told her not to open with that kind of laugh, and she flustered, apologizing and insisting it wasn't intentional. She then greeted him properly with a smile. Ryouta identified her in his thoughts as Tanaka Kanade, his one and only otaku friend from middle school. She commented on how cloudy it was, and he replied before suddenly snapping that he hadn't come there to play pretend like they were some middle-aged married couple. She repeated the phrase in confusion. Ryouta insisted they went way back and begged her to believe what he was about to tell her. Blushing, she agreed to listen. He began explaining the truth, but Kanade immediately referred to that day. Ryouta panicked and shouted how a loner like him could possibly know anything about that, then awkwardly agreed with her. Kanade asked whether he truly had no idea and suggested that maybe he had helped someone without realizing it. Ryouta firmly stated that there were zero romantic vibes between Rui and himself, and that he had never saved a beautiful girl in his life. Kanade agreed, saying the idea of him saving Rui sounded absurd, then suddenly froze as something came to mind. With a tense expression, she recalled an incident from junior high. Back when she was in the broadcast club, during the graduation ceremony in their second year, there had been a serious problem. She remembered being told to prepare the next equipment and panicking because the farewell speech from the underclassmen was about to begin. Rui, who was supposed to give the speech, had accidentally left the manuscript in the student council room. Everyone had been tense, realizing that even Rui couldn't give the speech without the script, and that there was no time left. Kanade explained that backstage had been in complete chaos. Ryouta then remembered that moment clearly. That was when he had fallen asleep and slipped off his chair. Thinking he was sick, the staff had rushed him to the hospital. Kanade confirmed that was exactly it, explaining that the two events were connected. Because Ryouta collapsed, the graduation ceremony was delayed for a few minutes. During that time, Rui slipped away, retrieved the farewell speech, and delivered it perfectly without a single mistake. Ryouta recalled seeing Rui smiling while looking at the empty chair. Realizing it, He understood that when Rui referred to that day, she was talking about the graduation ceremony. With a tense expression, he realized Rui believed he had helped her back then, and that she had been aware of him for 2 whole years. Shocked, he muttered in disbelief. Kaned hesitated before asking whether, in the end, he planned to confess to Rui. Ryouta immediately denied it. Kaned agreed enthusiastically, saying there was no way he could confess. Ryouta then turned the question back on her. Flustered and blushing, Kaned admitted she was all about 2D characters and was currently obsessed with a VTuber, asking if he was the same. Ryouta confirmed it, smiling and saying that they really hadn't changed at all. Kaned puffed her cheeks, stood up abruptly, and announced she was heading back. Ryouta thanked her, then wondered whether he had said something that upset her. Later, Ryouta walked down the hallway, thinking that thanks to Kaned, he felt much better. He opened the classroom door and froze. Yuria was asking whether he had studied for the classical literature test. Airi was sitting on his desk, saying she hadn't studied at all, and asking to see Yuria's notes. Rui announced that she was all set. As Ryouta walked toward his seat, he panicked internally, realizing Airi was sitting there. He silently begged her to notice him. Airi finally did, cheerfully apologizing and saying it was his seat. Yuria looked tense, while Rui remained expressionless. Ryouta scolded himself internally for letting Airi call him by his first name in front of everyone. Rui slowly repeated his name, then sharply questioned why Airi was calling him that. Airi panicked, covering her mouth and claiming she always called boys by their first names. Ryouta internally praised her quick save. Airi added that it was just a leftover habit from how she called her boyfriend. Yuria questioned her further, asking what her boyfriend's name was. Airi hesitated before blurting out a name that sounded suspiciously similar to Ryouta's. Ryouta internally protested the coincidence. Rui calmly noted how similar the names sounded, making Ryouta panic internally. Yuria commented on how surprising it was that Airi revealed her boyfriend's name. Eventually, Yuria told Airi to return to her seat, and Airi quickly agreed. As Ryouta finally sat down, he sighed in relief. He reflected on how Rui's sharp intelligence and Airi's carelessness needed Yuria's presence to maintain balance. He then noticed his seat still felt warm and smelled nice from Airi, blissfully thinking about the healing power of Airi's presence until he felt a deadly stare from Rui. Airi leaned in and whispered into his ear not to forget their after-school date. The teacher announced the start of homeroom, and Ryouta realized his heart had skipped a beat. Yuria then muttered that he was getting way too full of himself and questioned why he was even close with Airi too. Ryouta grew tense, wondering whether this was actually his own fault. Looking forward, he thought about how he couldn't properly handle being surrounded by 3 beautiful girls and was now being stared at by all of them. He sighed, realizing things were going to be rough. The scene shifted to Kaned at her desk, blushing as she muttered that Ryouta was an idiot. After school, Ryouta started walking home, thinking it was time to head back. He overheard girls talking about stopping by Staba and remembered Airi mentioning a cafe. Suddenly, boys shouted in surprise. Airi came running toward him, her chest bouncing as she called his name. Ryouta froze, blushing, and called out to her. She stopped in front of him, red-faced and tense, and told him that he was the worst. Ryouta stood there, confused and nervous, wondering if Airi was mad. With a tense expression, he wondered if he had done something wrong, whether she had noticed him staring at her chest. Blushing, Airi continued, explaining that the reason was simple. He had forgotten their promise. She complained that he was so mean, and reminded him that they were supposed to go on a Steba date after school. Ryouta reacted in shock, blurting out that it was today. Airi confirmed it with a smile, reminding him that he had promised they would go to Steba together, and casually added that, of course, he would be paying. Ryouta thought bitterly that she had gotten a taste for it after the katsu curry, but also admitted to himself that cuteness was justice. Airi then hesitated, and asked if he didn't want to go to Steba with her. Ryouta immediately bowed deeply, and declared that it would be his greatest honor to accompany her. Airi burst out laughing, saying he sounded like an underling and teasing him about it. When he asked if it was really that strange, she suggested that maybe she should treat him this time, since he paid for her katsu curry before. Blushing hard, Ryouta insisted that he would pay. Airi grabbed his hand, thanked him cheerfully, and they walked off together. As they left, Ryouta thought to himself that this was actually his first time going to Steba. The scene shifted to Steba. Ryouta looked around nervously, thinking that everywhere he looked was full of extroverts. With a tense face, he carried drinks in both hands. Airi asked why he was so nervous, and he replied that this place was total enemy territory for an introvert like him. Airi tilted her head, then boldly declared that if she was an extrovert, then Ryouta was one too, since they were super close. Ryouta denied it flatly, insisting he was an introvert. Eri questioned why, then suggested they sit down. They took their seats, and Eri happily announced that it was time to dig in. She took a big sip of her drink and exclaimed that it was really good. Watching her, Ryouta wondered if it was truly that tasty. After taking a sip himself, he admitted that it was good. As people passed by chatting, Eri casually remarked that it looked like others thought they were dating. Ryouta sputtered in shock, repeating her words in disbelief. Eri admitted that she had never had a boyfriend before, so she wouldn't really know, but wondered if how close they were made them look like a couple. Ryouta thought that normally it wouldn't, but aloud admitted that she might have a point. He then realized aloud that Miyama had really never had a boyfriend. Eri froze, flustered, and quickly denied it, explaining that the boyfriend story was just a cover for her part-time job. Ryouta thought that she truly didn't want anyone to know about her job. He then mentioned how shocked he had been when she said the name Yuta in front of Rui that morning. Eri explained that at that moment, it was the only name that came to mind. Ryouta reacted in disbelief, but Eri brushed it off and declared that today wasn't about boyfriends at all. She explained that the real purpose was for Rui and Ryouta to get closer, calling that the good part. Ryouta immediately felt uneasy. Eri excitedly said she really wanted Rui to get along with Ryouta too, then started rummaging through her bag. Ryouta sighed as she pulled out her phone and explained that if Rui felt the same way, then communication with Ryouta was important. Smiling brightly, she revealed her plan, proudly calling it the Lime Communication Operation. Eri explained that it was easier to talk over Lime, and that even if Rui wasn't his girlfriend, getting closer was best. She declared Step 1, exchanging Lime IDs. Ryouta reacted hesitantly, internally panicking. He looked at his phone and thought about the sexy selfie Rui had sent him. Eri then said she had already sent him Rui's ID and told him to message her right away. Ryouta thought desperately that Miyama was completely misunderstanding the situation. He reasoned internally that Rui only sent him selfies to maintain her perfect image and keep him interested, not because she liked him. He panicked at the thought of Miyama seeing those messages. Eri suddenly asked to see his phone and took it before he could stop her. Ryouta panicked, stammering in protest. Eri stared at the screen and asked what it was, realizing it was a photo Rui had sent him. She accused him of doing that every night and angrily called him gross, a creepy introverted otaku, telling him never to come near her again. Ryouta denied it desperately, thinking he had to avoid this outcome at all costs. He forced himself to think and quickly claimed that Rui was busy with club activities and that he would send proof of their chat later. He suggested doing it another time. Eri hesitated, then agreed, reasoning that Rui's tournament was coming up anyway. Ryouta thought he was safe. Still disappointed, Eri said she had wanted to see the two of them talk in real time. Ryouta then asked why she was always trying to pair him up with others, mentioning Yuria as well. Eri admitted that this time it was also because Rui seemed to like the idea. Ryouta was surprised. Eri pointed out that he was always by himself, and while he agreed, she said she thought hanging out with everyone was fun too. Smiling warmly, she said that since their seats were close, she wanted him to enjoy spending time with her and the others as well before quickly, adding that she was just kidding. Ryouta said nothing at first, then thought that Miyama was actually very kind, maybe too kind. He told her not to worry, and said that even if she didn't force herself to get along with him, just talking with her was fun. Eri looked surprised and asked if he really enjoyed getting along with her. He confirmed it, admitting it was fun, though he thought her idea of fun might be different. Eri nodded and suggested forgetting everything they talked about earlier. She told him he didn't need to force himself to message Rui on Lime, and that she just wanted him to keep getting along with her. She asked him if he had fun when he was with her. Ryouta answered nervously that he did. Eri then declared that from now on, she would make his high school life fun. With a wink, she said that Ryouta would keep her secret, and she would make sure he had fun, calling it a win-win. Ryouta blushed, thinking that no matter how he looked at it, he was the only one benefiting. Eri added that since they were sharing secrets that made them special, so of course they should get along. She leaned in close, smiling, and Ryouta agreed awkwardly. He thought that Eri really didn't see this as romance at all, and admired her honesty, blushing as he thought that if he weren't such a gloomy otaku, he would fall for her. Eri suddenly asked to try his melon drink. Ryouta panicked, but before he could stop her, she took it and drank. He blushed hard, realizing it was an indirect kiss. Eri commented that the melon flavor was tasty, and offered him her drink in return. Ryouta refused loudly, insisting it was gross because it was an indirect kiss. Airi teased him for being hung up on that and admitted she didn't really mind, saying she didn't even think twice about swapping drinks with the other two. She offered to switch instead if it bothered him. Ryouta desperately told her to leave it as it was. Airi laughed and handed the drink back. Ryouta stared at the straw, thinking about how it had touched Miyama's lips. As he was about to drink, Yuria suddenly appeared and asked what the two of them were doing. Ryouta froze. Airi greeted Yuria cheerfully. Ryouta panicked internally, wondering why Ichinose was there. Yuria explained she could see them swapping frappes from outside and confiscated the drink, declaring she would be the one to drink it. Ryouta watched in despair, thinking his first indirect kiss was gone. Yuria then demanded to know why they were at Stiba, and recalling how Airi called him by his first name that morning, asked if they were dating. Airi quickly denied it, explaining that Ryouta was just treating her as a thank you. Ryouta internally praised her save. Yuria repeated the explanation skeptically, then looked at Ryouta with a cute expression and asked if it was true. Ryouta blushed, confused by the pressure. Yuria then announced they were heading home. Airi agreed and waved to Ryouta, thanking him for everything. As they left, Ryouta sat back down, looking at the cafe and thinking that his very first after-school date with a girl had ended quickly, but that the cafe wasn't so bad. His phone rang. It was a message from Yuria, apologizing if Airi had pressured him and saying she would start calling him Ryouta too. He thought it was fine if she misunderstood, but wondered why even Ichinose was calling him by his first name. She followed up by telling him he could just call her Yuria. Ryouta blushed hard, panicking about what he was supposed to do the next time they met, especially since their next meeting was the movie on Sunday. He replied that he got it. The scene then shifted to Airi apologizing to Yuria for keeping her waiting because the bathroom was crowded. As they walked together, Airi excitedly talked about the new Steba flavor, peach, and matcha. Yuria commented that she wanted to try it too. Airi suggested she do so and asked about Sunday. Yuria flinched and said Sunday was a secret. Airi grew curious, and Yuria laughed. The scene shifted, and Ryouta was shown thinking that life was full of surprises. He checked his watch. It read 9:58 a.m. He wondered aloud whether his outfit looked weird, then thought about how strange it was that a gloomy loner like him was worrying about his clothes because he was meeting a girl for a date. From behind him, Yuria apologized and asked if she had kept him waiting. Ryouta was startled and thought that the girl he was meeting was Yuria greeted him properly, saying it was nice to meet him today. Ryouta thought about how unbelievable it was that he was out with Ichinose Yuria, the queen of the class cast. He looked at her and let out a small, awkward sound. In his thoughts, he noticed her casual clothes and her amazing thighs. While he was blushing and staring, Yuria suddenly grabbed his face with her hand. Ryouta gasped in surprise. While holding his face, Yuria told him he was staring too much and instructed him to look at her face instead of her thighs. Still blushing, Ryouta apologized. Yuria immediately asked if that was his kink. Ryouta answered honestly that it was. Yuria reacted instantly, calling him gross for answering so quickly. She then told him to keep that kind of thing just for her. Ryouta was internally shocked. Yuria warned him that if he tried that with another girl, he would lose his place. Blushing, Ryouta wondered if that meant it was okay as long as it was Ichinose. He nervously agreed. Yuria told him to hurry up and go see the movie with her, and called him by his name. They began walking, and Ryouta asked whether she had thought he was gross when she found out he was an otaku. Yuria replied that she had not and questioned why she would. She said that someone who looked like a flashy gyaru on the outside but was secretly the same as her usually felt like a trap. Ryouta thought about how Ichinose might have had a falling out with her friends in the past, and wondered if that was why she was so sensitive about it. Deciding to be honest, he told her that he really appreciated it. He said there were not many gyaru who could understand otaku culture, and that having an understanding gyaru like Ichinose made him very happy. Yuria smiled and let out a thoughtful sound while blushing. She then told him that more importantly, she had told him to call her Yuria, yet he was calling her Ichinose again. Ryouta apologized and tried calling her Yuria, adding Chan. Yuria immediately told him not to add Chan, calling it gross. Ryouta thought that she was a gyaru with a lot of demands. They were then shown walking toward the theater. Yuria looked excited and commented that being able to witness Milk Tan's breast milk on a giant screen like this was seriously moving. Nearby, a heavy-set man shouted that the seats were god tier. Ryouta and Yuria sat down, and Yuria admitted that it kind of made her nervous. Ryouta agreed. Yuria asked whether Ryouta normally wore mo t-shirts. He replied that he wore them every now and then, looking tense. Yuria then asked why he was not wearing one today, and added that he looked kind of cool, blushing as she said it. Ryouta stammered and internally panicked, thinking about how it was his first time going out with a girl and how he had dressed nicely because he was hyped. He wondered if that sounded gross. Yuria encouraged him, telling him there was nothing wrong with that. Ryouta explained that it was because he was walking next to Ichinose. Yuria asked what that was supposed to mean. Ryouta said he could not exactly walk next to a beauty like Ichinose while wearing a mo t-shirt, and that he thought it would be rude if his hair were messy as well. Yuria gulped and blushed hard. Ryouta worried that he might have seriously upset her and nervously called out to her. Yuria, shaking, asked if he really thought she was a beauty. Ryouta said that he did and expressed disbelief that she did not realize it herself. Yuria shouted that she was aware of it, then admitted that she had just been thinking that Ryouta felt the same way too. Ryouta smiled. Yuria immediately pointed out that he had called her Ichinose again. He apologized and corrected himself, awkwardly saying her name. Yuria smiled and said that was better. She then announced that the movie was starting. After the movie, the scene shifted to the escalators. Yuria exclaimed that the movie was amazing. Ryouta commented that the story was surprisingly deep and interesting. Yuria went on about how Milktan, despite being super lewd, ended up with massive boobs, and how the breast milk becoming a weapon was tear-jerking. Ryouta gave a small, stunned response. As they walked, Ryouta asked if she wanted to grab food next. Yuria apologized and said she was not hungry yet. She said that more than food, there was somewhere she wanted to go and implied that he understood. The scene shifted to a store. Yuria drooled slightly and called it actual heaven. Ryouta asked if it was her first time coming to animate. She admitted it was and said that coming alone had felt intimidating. Ryouta smiled to himself, thinking that he understood and that it must have been even harder for someone who looked like a gyaru. Yuria added that she was super relaxed today because Ryouta was with her. Ryouta blushed and asked if she really meant that. She confirmed it. Ryouta clenched his fist, thinking about how happy that made him. Yuria suddenly pointed something out, excitedly calling attention to a special corner for Jukyun. She bent forward and exclaimed that they even had milk-tan boob mouse pads. Ryouta thought that her backside was far more impressive. Yuria asked if she could take a moment to think about what to buy. Ryouta agreed and said he would check out the light novel section. Standing there, Ryouta thought about how he had already finished Grandma Vampire. Yuria noticed him and smiled. Ryouta asked if she had figured out what she was getting. Yuria asked him whether the milk-tan jumbo boob baby bottle or the boob mouse pad was better. Ryouta internally questioned what kind of choice that was and suggested the mouse pad would be more practical. Yuria replied that she still wanted to fully enjoy the breast milk splash feature. Ryouta thought she was something else. Yuria decided to get both. She walked out happily and commented that it was a pretty good haul. Ryouta thought about how she was completely an otaku inside a gyaru's body, and how seeing her carrying the store's blue bag felt oddly refreshing. Yuria then asked where to go next, and said there was one more place she wanted to visit. Ryouta questioned it, and she confirmed it with a grin. The scene shifted, and Ryouta recognized it as an arcade. Yuria asked him to play the crane game for her again. Ryouta agreed and asked if that was the figure she wanted, calling her Ichinose again. Yuria complained about him using her last name and said she preferred being called Yuria. Ryouta said he was not used to it and tried saying her name again. Yuria approved. She then reflected on how they had been total strangers the last time they were there. Yet only a few days later, they were back as friends. Ryouta agreed and said he had not thought he could talk so casually with her. Yuria laughed and said it was seriously funny. Blushing, Ryouta asked what had made her become an otaku. He admitted he was curious about why she had gotten into anime and thought about how he had not planned to pry into her past but wanted to take one small step in today. Yuria hesitated, then said it was the first time she was saying something like this. She explained that the blue bag held a memory from when she was in the lower grades of elementary school. In the flashback, she called out to a boy her age and invited him to play since he had been reading alone. When they parted, the boy thanked her and gave her a manga. She explained that the manga was the start of everything. It turned out to be from a boys' magazine and was kind of pervy, but cute, and it made her feel tingly. Before she knew it, she was completely hooked on manga. She added that she admired the gal heroine from that series and said that was the reason she was who she was today. Ryouta thought in disbelief that the #1 gal in school had been inspired by a manga. He commented that thanks to that manga, Both her gal side and otaku side were born. Yuria replied uncertainly. Ryouta said they owed that elementary school kid some thanks, and reflected on how he himself had used to sneak off to read sexy manga. He suddenly noticed that he could get the figure. Yuria reacted excitedly. Ryouta succeeded, and Yuria praised him. The scene shifted to the train station. Yuria said that today had been the best and thanked him. Ryouta replied that as long as she had fun, that was all that mattered. Yuria then told him quietly not to call her Yuria in front of Eri or Rui. Ryouta complained that she kept changing her mind. Yuria said she did not mind being called Ichinose instead, but warned him that if Eri and Rui misunderstood something, it would be his problem. Ryouta thought of Rui and bowed, asking to call her Ichinose. Yuria laughed and accepted it. She then said that things would get busy with culture festival preparations but asked him to hang out with her again. Ryouta agreed. She made him promise. The train announcement played, and Yuria said it was her stop. She said goodbye and left. After she walked away, Ryuta's legs shook. He sat down and admitted the date had been nerve-wracking, then smiled, thinking it had been simple but really fun. He reflected that this must be what a date felt like. Suddenly, the train announcement said the next station. Ryouta realized it was his stop and panicked. He rushed out and noticed a girl sitting on a bench, flipping through a book. As the doors closed, he recognized her. It was Rui. Ryouta froze in place and called out in shock, asking if it was Kuroki. Rui responded with a soft, "Oh my," laughing as she closed her book and stood up. Still stunned, Ryouta heard her remark that it was quite a coincidence. Addressing him as Ryouta-kun, he wondered why Kuroki was here at all. Rui stepped closer and commented that he was all dressed up, asking whether he had been on a date with someone. Ryouta hurriedly denied it aloud, while internally panicking and apologizing in his mind that it had actually been with Ichinose. Rui reacted with mild surprise and leaned in to sniff him, remarking that he kind of smelled like a girl. Ryouta backed away, blushing, and hastily claimed it had been a maid cafe. Rui echoed the words in curiosity, and Ryouta, flustered, insisted that otaku went to maid cafes on Sundays, declaring that they were creatures who craved maid service. Rui smiled and gently pitied him, calling him a poor Ryouta-kun as she walked past. Embarrassed, Ryouta protested that if she pitied him, she should just leave an otaku like him alone, only for Rui to suddenly turn around and suggest they go on a date. Ryouta repeated the word date in disbelief. Rui clarified that she only meant walking around near the station. Ryouta questioned why she would go that far. Rui sat down on a nearby bench and asked whether he had been happy when he saw her sitting there. Ryouta hesitated, and after she stared at him in silence, he finally agreed that he did not know if it counted as a date, but since they were heading the same way home anyway, they might as well walk together. Rui laughed, and when Ryouta asked why, she brushed it off, saying it was nothing. As they walked side by side, Ryouta glanced at her from the corner of his eye and thought that Kuroki really was beautiful, someone of perfectionist nature, a little intense, yet still oddly captivating. Rui suddenly spotted a cat and called out to it, chasing after it while telling it to wait. Ryouta called after her. They soon found themselves in a park, where Rui patted the cat's head and sat down, calling it cute as she rubbed its belly. Ryouta asked if she liked cats. Rui hummed thoughtfully and, while hugging the cat, said that between him and a cat, she might choose the cat. Ryouta thought he had lost to a cat. Rui teased him for looking disappointed, but he denied it vehemently. She laughed, teasing him for getting jealous of a cat and calling him cute, even joking about rubbing his tummy too. Ryouta flatly refused, while privately thinking that if anything, he would rather see her belly button. Rui laughed again before growing serious, saying that to her, cats were special. Ryouta sat beside her and asked what she meant. Rui explained that she used to have one when she was little, but it had already passed away. Ryouta felt the mood suddenly grow heavy and muttered awkwardly. Rui continued, saying that thanks to that cat, something else special had entered her life, and that was why she loved cats and felt grateful to them. When Ryouta asked what that something else special was, the scene shifted into her memory. Rui recalled a day after taking her cat to the vet, when the cat suddenly jumped out of the car window. Panicking, she and her mother shouted for it, terrified it would be run over in the busy parking lot. Crying, Rui remembered seeing a boy appear in front of them with the cat perched on his shoulder and bags in both hands. Ryuta's narration described the impressive coordination of a cat on his shoulder while carrying groceries. Rui admitted, blushing, that to her, the boy had looked incredibly cool. She explained that he left right afterward, but his quiet demeanor made him seem even cooler and more admirable. She bent toward Ryouta and revealed that the boy was the other special one she had been talking about, asking if he felt better now. Ryouta thanked her for telling him and suggested they should get going. Rui reacted with mild surprise, prompting him to awkwardly try to explain himself. The scene shifted again as Ryouta realized they had arrived at Kuroki's place. Rui called out to him softly and warned that if he let her slip away, he might regret it. Blushing, Ryouta asked what she meant. Rui laughed, placed a hand on the door, and thanked him for walking her home, saying she had enjoyed their little walking date. As Ryouta blushed and thought about Kuroki, Rui winked and told him she would send more pictures later that day. Stunned, Ryouta watched her close the door and admitted to himself that while he did not dislike the idea, his inability to deny it made him wonder if he really was just a pervert after all. As he walked away, Rui looked at her phone and laughed quietly, remarking that the culture festival was just around the corner. The scene shifted to Monday morning at school. Ryouta sat at his desk reading when Airi repeatedly called his name and asked what he planned to vote for in the festival poll. Ryouta was confused at first, then remembered their class attraction. Airi enthusiastically proposed either a cafe or a play, saying a cafe would be fun. Ryouta stuttered at the idea, imagining Airi in a maid outfit welcoming customers home, and internally declared it a win. Yuria and Rui arrived, greeting Airi. Yuria asked what Airi and Izumiya had been talking about, and Airi replied that it was about the festival vote. Yuria sat down coolly, and Ryouta thought about how cold she seemed, despite the fact that they had been on a date yesterday. Rui laughed and leaned in close, asking Ryouta which one he would vote for, the cafe or the play. Both Airi and Yuria reacted in shock at Rui calling him Ryouta-kun, and Ryouta panicked internally, thinking she was about to cause another scene. Airi demanded to know why Rui was calling him Ryouta too, pointing out that they had not really talked before. Yuria calmly explained that since Airi called him Ryouta, she simply followed suit, adding that it would be confusing if everyone called him something different. Ryouta internally praised her logic. Rui then suggested that Yuria should call him Ryouta as well. Yuria hesitated, blushed, and awkwardly complied. Ryouta responded, thinking it was unfair since she had already been calling him that non-stop yesterday, but realized that now everyone called him Ryouta. When Yuria asked Rui what she planned to vote for, Rui said she was still deciding, but might choose the play. Ryouta repeated the words in his mind with unease. Yuria agreed, explaining that as a committee member, the play would be easier due to paperwork. Airi protested, urging Rui to choose the cafe so they could be maids together. Rui modestly claimed she was not as cute as the other two, prompting Yuria to insist that if Rui was not cute, then they would be mere background characters. Rui playfully lifted Yuria's chin, teasing her for complimenting her, while Yuria insisted she was just stating facts. Airi eventually agreed to choose the play to make things easier for Yuria. Ryouta decided he would probably vote for the play as well, reasoning that he would likely end up as a stagehand anyway. When the teacher announced the results that Class 2B would do a play, Ryouta acknowledged the outcome. As the teacher moved on to discuss the performance, Rui raised her hand and suggested Snow White, smiling at Ryouta. Seeing her expression, Ryouta felt a strong sense of dread, convinced that this suggestion spelled trouble. Rui stood up and suggested Snow White, adding that if they tried something original, preparation would become difficult, so a classic work would be best. Ryouta, his face tense, thought that Snow White only woke up if a handsome prince kissed her, and that it was basically the downfall of a spoiled, neat girl. He wondered why anyone would choose a story with a kiss scene. The boys in class reacted immediately, saying Snow White sounded great, calling it a brilliant and amazing idea, and agreeing enthusiastically because Kuroki had suggested it. Ryouta thought the class was far too easy to sway. Airi excitedly told Ryouta that if it was Snow White, they could be dwarves together. Ryouta internally doubted the existence of a dwarf like her. Rui then added that doing a normal play sounded boring and proposed a twist. The boys would play Snow White, and the girls would play the prince. Ryouta froze, thinking in shock that it was a gender-swapped Snow White. He observed the class and realized that while it was fine for the girls, it would be nothing but humiliation for the boys. Even though it was Rui's idea, he felt uneasy. Some students voiced approval, saying they liked it and that it sounded fun, agreeing simply because Kuroki had suggested it. Rui declared the decision settled. Ryouta realized the class had turned into unconditional approval bots and thought that this was the overwhelming force of someone absolute like Kuroki Ruri. Yuria instructed the class to split by gender and decide the cast roles, and the class agreed. Among the boys, one student commented that even for Kuroki, Having a boy play Snow White was rough, while another said cross-dressing was too much. Ryouta thought this was what peer pressure led to. Another student noted that Kuroki would not even play the prince since nationals were coming up and she would not have spare time, which Ryouta acknowledged as true. Someone else said that if it was not Kuroki, he would pass, while another admitted he would accept if Airi were the prince, but otherwise the risk was too high. At that point, the boys suggested Izumiya as Snow White. Ryouta reacted in shock. One student bowed and argued that Izumiya had the best grades among the guys and would be good at memorizing lines. Another urged him to accept. Ryouta protested that grades had nothing to do with this and internally panicked, telling himself to reject it because being the lead was far too much for him. He glanced at Rui, who smiled. Hesitating, he finally agreed, declaring that he would do it. The class erupted in excitement. Ryouta immediately regretted it, thinking he was an idiot and should have just said no. Yuria wrote his name on the board and announced that the boy's Snow White role would go to Izumiya-kun. Slumped at his desk, Ryouta wished someone would kill him already. Airi congratulated him enthusiastically, calling it amazing and saying being the lead was cool. Ryouta thought bitterly that they did not understand how he felt. He then realized that Airi's wording meant she was not the lead, which led to Yuria announcing that the girl's prince role would be played by her. Ryouta processed this and thought that it really was Yuria after all. Yuria, looking tense, added that Prince number 2 would be played by Rui, making it a double cast. Ryouta was shocked, unable to believe it. The boys reacted loudly, lamenting their bad predictions and calling Izumiya lucky. Ryouta wondered how things had ended up like this, and blamed it on Kuroki, assuming she was probably delighted that everything had gone according to plan until he noticed her dissatisfied expression. Shocked, he wondered if something had happened between Yuria and Rui during role selection, then dismissed it, telling himself it had nothing to do with him. Blushing, he insisted internally that he was not interested. The scene shifted to after school, where Airi apologized for the wait and expressed surprise that Ryouta had shown up at her workplace. He apologized for the sudden visit and explained he wanted to talk. Airi happily declared she was thrilled because she was getting an after-school date with him. Ryouta blushed, calling her name, and Airi suggested going to her usual spot, a place she had gone to since elementary school. He agreed. As they walked, Airi asked what he wanted to talk about. Ryouta explained that Ichinose and Kuroki had ended up double cast and asked what it was like when the roles were decided. Airi asked if he was curious, and he admitted he was, adding that she was the only female friend he could ask. Airi leaned in playfully, saying that being the only one made her happy. Ryouta blushed, thinking she was incredibly cute. Airi explained that when choosing the prince, everyone initially pushed for Rui, but Yuria stopped it, saying Rui had nationals coming up and offering to do it herself. Airi remarked that Yuria was kind. Ryouta agreed but questioned why Ichinose would not be chosen after that. Airi explained that Rui supporters and Yuria supporters split evenly, so they settled on double casting. Ryouta called it ridiculous, while Airi cheerfully promised to support Princess Ryouta as one of the dwarves. He thanked her. They arrived at Airi's favorite dagashi shop. Ryouta was shocked it was not a cafe like Starbucks. Airi explained that dagashi shops were cheap and let her eat lots of snacks, which she loved. Ryouta reflected that she must have gone through a lot. Airi said she had gone to dagashi shops since elementary school, but her old one closed, making this her new go-to. Ryouta asked if she came here after work, and she said she usually bought 10 umaya sticks. Ryouta joked internally that her body must be made of dagashi and imagined it as a national strategy. When Airi asked why he looked serious, he claimed he was thinking about politics, confusing her. Inside the shop, Ryouta remarked that it really was a dagashi shop and reminisced about biking to one as a kid. Spotting wafers, he called them nostalgic and said he used to collect the stickers. Airi agreed, saying wafers were memorable to her. She explained her family had been very poor, so she could only buy snacks rarely. She recalled watching another child win free ice cream while her stomach growled. The next day, a boy with a blue bag appeared and offered her a wafer, saying he only wanted the sticker. Airi remembered being incredibly happy and revealed she had been bullied for being poor, so no one was ever kind to her. She confessed that ever since that day, she had loved that boy and was not interested in other boys. Ryouta acknowledged it quietly, thinking that boy was incredibly lucky. They sat on a bench and ate, with Airi happily enjoying her snack. Ryouta spilled ramune on himself, and Airi laughed, handing him tissues and reminding him not to stay sticky. As she leaned close, Ryouta thanked her and thought she was truly kind. but also believed she already had someone special and would never see him as a prince. Airi asked for a wafer, and Ryouta offered it, saying he only wanted the sticker. Airi froze and blushed, realizing the wording overlapped perfectly with her memory. She brushed it off and started eating, coughing, and Ryouta offered his ramyun. She drank it, revived, and called him her lifesaver, returning the bottle. Ryouta blushed. He realized the ramune was an indirect kiss opportunity, and, after checking around, drank it. Airi started to say something but stopped, flustered, and urged him to hurry so they could walk home together. Ryouta agreed. Later, Airi waved goodbye, and Ryouta thought she really was a good girl who was kind even to him. When he got home, his sister greeted him casually, announcing she had eaten his ice cream. Shocked and angry, he learned it was a limited edition, Häagen-Dazs. She then added that Tanaka was at their house. Ryouta froze, wondering why Tanaka was there. With a tense expression, Ryouta asked if Tanaka was at their house. His sister casually replied that she had been there until just a minute ago. She explained that Tanaka had said she had only happened to drop by, but that something seemed to have come up and suggested he asked her online. Ryouta responded that he already knew and went to his room. Shortly after, Kaned sent him a message asking if he wanted to talk on the phone for a bit. His phone buzzed again. Confused, he checked it and saw that it was from Rui. Her message said that so he could do his best in the play, she would send him a photo today as well. Attached was a picture. Ryouta reacted in shock, noticing her twin tails and exclaiming that it was Kuroki. Rui teased that this was the kind of thing he liked, wasn't it? Internally, he admitted that it was exactly his type. Another notification arrived from Kanade saying she could talk on the phone now. As he saved Rui's picture, he greeted Tanaka, saying it had been a long time. Kanade responded warmly that it had indeed been a long time. He asked whether she had come by his house earlier, and if she needed something. She hesitated and said she had heard a strange rumor about the cultural festival that Ryouta was playing Snow White, and that Ichinose and Kuroki were playing the prince. Ryouta thought that it was not a rumor at all, but true. Kanade said that even the premise sounded wrong, so it had to be a rumor, right? Ryouta admitted, with tension in his voice, that it was true, and that he was playing Snow White. Kanade asked if lately he had not been losing it in several ways. Pointing out that he was cross-dressing, Ryouta snapped that he could not help it, and that it had ended up being him who had to do it. Kanade calmly concluded that the extroverts must have bulldozed him into it. Ryouta thought that was exactly what one would expect from an introverted girl like her. She then asked whether he even properly understood Snow White's story. Ryouta insisted he did and thought he had the manga on his shelf. He searched his bookshelf, repeating the title to himself, only to realize that Volume 1 was missing. He dismissed it and said it did not matter. Kanade asked if he had found it. He said no. She then recommended a version titled Isekai Chart Snow White. You woke up the strongest me with a kiss, and then you annul our engagement. Ryouta accused her of simply wanting to evangelize it. Kanade returned to the topic, noting again that he was playing Snow White. He replied that he had no choice. She confirmed that the prince roles were Kuroki and Ichinose. When he affirmed that, she remarked that the two of them as princes was practically cheating, saying that unlike introverts like them, their very existence was a cheat. Ryouta partially agreed. She then asked how things were going lately with the three beauties. Ryouta casually replied that he had just been going on dates. Kanade was stunned and exclaimed that he was dating a lot, or rather, that dates were all he did. He confirmed that was pretty much the case. She commented that he had changed and joked that one day he would just lose his virginity at random and stop talking to an introvert like her. He asked why she sounded sulky and insisted that there was no way someone like him could suddenly lose his virginity. He explained seriously that even if he went on dates with those three, it would not lead to that kind of relationship. Kenneth seemed surprised. He clarified that each of them liked someone else, apparently the boy they had fallen for back in elementary school. Therefore, even if they hung out with him, it did not mean they would date him. Kanade sighed in relief. Ryouta wondered if she was that relieved, knowing he was still an introvert. He added that even hypothetically, if he could date one of them, he would not ditch her. She was his one and only otaku friend. Kanade blushed and said she had known he had not changed. Ryouta insisted he had changed, mentioning he had gone on a lovey-dovey date. Kanade teased that if he could not date any of the three, he would be a virgin for life. Ryouta admitted internally that he could not argue with that. She said that would be fine too. When he asked what she meant, she brushed it off and said she had cram school soon. He thanked her for everything and said that because they had known each other so long, he could speak freely with her, and it was easy. Kaned blushed intensely and said that was exactly it. She ended the call abruptly, leaving him confused about what she meant. A few days later at school, someone announced that the script was finished. Ryouta excitedly grabbed it. Airi rushed over and showed him that her dwarf character had many lines. He acknowledged it, thinking it was probably a strategy to attract her fans. Airi was thrilled about having many lines. Ryouta noticed that even the hunter and dwarfs were girls, and the princes were Yuria and Kuroki. He realized this effectively created a snow-white harem centered on him and felt briefly delighted. It was announced that Yuria would play the prince in the morning show and Rui in the afternoon show. Ryouta noted that since it was double cast, he would first act with Yuria and later with Kuroki. Secretly, he wished Snow White could be double cast as well. Yuria approached him and said that even though it was her first time doing theater, she would take it seriously and expected him to do the same. He nervously agreed. After she walked away, Rui commented that Yuria became intense in strange places. Rui approached him, touched his chest, and said they would become destined partners, so they should have lots of fun. Pressed against the board, he asked what she meant. Rui whispered that it was they were Snow White and the prince. Guided by fate. He wondered what hidden meaning she was implying. Later, Ryouta reflected that although Rui's words bothered him, he had to do his best. Airi suggested everyone read the script together that day and noted Rui was off from track practice. Rui confirmed she was free. Airi suggested practicing at Rui's house. Rui glanced at Ryouta but declined, saying her house had a guest. Airi admitted her own house was small and messy. Yuria said her room was not an option either. Ryouta assumed it was because it was an otaku room. Airi then suggested that they go to a family restaurant. Yuria immediately objected, reminding her that the last time it had been filled with delinquents and extremely noisy. However, she added that thanks to Rui, everyone had gone quiet almost instantly. Airi excitedly praised Rui, saying she had silenced those delinquents in a moment and that it had been incredibly cool. Rui laughed modestly and replied that it had not been anything special and that such a thing was normal for her. He found himself wondering what she considered normal. Yuria then suggested Starbucks. Airi pointed out that it might be crowded and they might not find seats. Yuria asked what they were ultimately going to do and said that since Rui was free that day, she was fine with wherever Rui decided. Airi agreed and said she would also be fine with karaoke or the bowling alley. Yuria sighed and reminded them that they were supposed to be reading the script together, not playing around. Airi teasingly called her a goody two-shoes and, with a mischievous smile, added that for someone so proper, her underwear that day had been surprisingly flashy. Yuria immediately protested, flustered, and told Airi not to say strange things. Hearing that, he tensed up internally in shock, unable to process what he had just heard, and his imagination began running wild. Yuria grabbed Airi and scolded her again, while Airi apologized repeatedly. As he watched the two of them struggle, his thoughts spiraled into exaggerated fantasies, until Rui suddenly covered his eyes from behind. Startled, he turned and realized it was Rui, who was laughing softly. Rui then told Airi and Yuria to stop fighting and announced that she had decided where they should go. Yuria asked where, and Airi guessed karaoke. Rui calmly replied that it was not that. She placed her hand on his shoulder and said she wanted to go to Ryuta's house. Both Airi and Yuria were stunned. He froze with a tense expression, realizing that perhaps the smile Rui had shown earlier had been part of a plan. Airi quickly said she also wanted to go to his place, and Yuria added that it might be a good place to relax. He felt the situation coming together far too smoothly. In his mind, he pictured all three of them sitting on his bed. The realization hit him all at once they were really coming to his house. Airi cheerfully declared that it was decided. The three girls stood in front of him, and Airi announced that they were coming over to Ryuta's place, leaving him completely stunned. Then the scene shifted to the four of them walking home together. Airi remarked that it felt kind of fresh walking home as a group of four, asking if it did not. Rui suggested they grab some snacks at the convenience store. Yuria agreed that if they were hanging out, it was a must. Airi then pointed out that Ryuta's place had games and other things, right? Ryouta wondered how this had even happened. He nervously clarified that they were coming over to read through the script and would go home once they were done, right? The three girls said nothing. He called out to them, but they remained silent. When they arrived in front of his house, Airi cheerfully announced that they were at Ryuta's house. Panicking, he asked them to wait just 3 minutes so he could tidy up his room. Yuria refused and told him to let them in already. Airi said she wanted to sit down. Yuria added that they would not mind if it was messy. Ryouta insisted that he minded. Yuria finally relented, saying they would wait 3 minutes for now. He thanked them awkwardly and rushed inside, thinking he had to do something in 3 minutes. He realized there was no time to put away his otaku merchandise. They already knew he was an otaku anyway. More importantly, he needed deodorizer spray. He hurriedly sprayed it, thinking that at least the smell would improve. Before he could finish, Airi opened the door, announcing that time was up and that 3 minutes had passed as she stepped inside. He tried to stop her, calling out to Miyama. She responded with a confused sound. Rui entered and observed that this was Ryouta-kun's room. Airi exclaimed that there were tons of girl wall scrolls. Yuria remarked that she had been thinking this for a while, but Ryouta really was such an otaku. He internally shot back that she was one too. Trying to regain control, he declared that they should focus on the script. Airi suddenly commented that it smelled like deodorizer spray. He admitted he had used it earlier, figuring the room might stink. She leaned closer and sniffed him, saying she liked Ryuta's smell though. She then asked Yuria if Ryouta smelled nice. Yuria, blushing, admitted that she did not dislike his smell either. Embarrassed, he thanked them, thinking he did not understand this at all. Rui then suggested drinking the juice they had bought earlier and asked to borrow some cups. He agreed and said he would grab them from the kitchen. As he was about to leave, he hesitated, realizing that if he left, it would be just the three of them in his room. He wondered anxiously whether they would rummage through his things. Rui called his name, and he told them to just sit wherever and wait before heading out. Carrying plates and glasses, he reassured himself that it would probably be fine, as long as they did not look under the bed. He reflected that he had expected them to be far more put off, but surprisingly they were not. He had thought normal people like them would hate otaku. As he walked up the stairs, he wondered if that meant they had grown closer. Standing at the door, he thought that he never would have imagined having this kind of relationship with the three of them not long ago. When he returned and announced that he had brought the cups, he saw Yuria sitting on a chair using her phone, Airi sitting on the floor, greeting him excitedly, and Rui sitting on his bed thanking him for the cups. Relieved, he thought it was safe. Rui offered to pour the juice, and Yuria said she would help. Airi then called out to him, saying the game console would not turn on. He questioned why she was already playing games when they were supposed to read the script. She insisted she wanted to play. Sighing, he accepted this was how it would be. He noticed the console was not plugged in. Airi asked what kind of games he played. He answered that these days he mostly played RPGs. Then he suddenly realized something was wrong. Airi excitedly shouted that it had started, reading aloud the outrageous game title about a heart-pounding swimming meet full of ex-idols and wardrobe malfunctions, calling it a weird title. Yuria turned, blushing in shock, and Rui also looked at him. He panicked internally, realizing he had left an erotic Blu-ray inside. Now they would know his tastes in more ways than one. Yuria called his name accusingly. Rui calmly turned to Airi and suggested they prepare the snacks and asked Airi to get some ice. Airi agreed with a smile and left. Once Airi was gone, Rui, with an angry expression, said there was something she wanted to ask him. Both she and Yuria demanded to know exactly what that was. He apologized. Yuria shouted, asking why he was watching something so perverted and pointing out that normally people watch things like that online these days. Flustered, he admitted he preferred watching on a big TV screen. Yuria reacted in disbelief. Rui laughed lightly and said that was so like him. He asked why she was just accepting that. Rui replied that he was a teenage boy too, and that it was normal for him to watch that kind of stuff. Yuria reacted in shock. Yuria then questioned why Rui was acting like she was the only one who understood him, reminding her that they were just from the same middle school. Rui responded that it was because she and Ryouta-kun were, and trailed off suggestively while glancing at him. He thought she should stop hinting like that. Yuria demanded to know what that was supposed to mean and asked if they were secretly dating. He immediately denied it, insisting they had only gone to the same middle school. Yuria pointed out that Rui claimed to hate men, yet treated Ryouta differently. Rui countered that if Yuria was going to say that, then Yuria treated him differently too, adding that the two of them really clicked. Yuria insisted that was beside the point and that she was asking about Rui's relationship with him right now. He thought Kuroki's earlier comment had complicated everything, and that at this rate he would rather they keep teasing him about the Blu-ray. Blushing, he wondered if Kuroki had changed the subject on purpose. At that moment, Airi returned, announcing she had brought ice and urging them to hurry up and play the game. All three of them immediately declared they were not doing that. Confused, Airi went ahead and played anyway. only to lose repeatedly. She complained that Rui was too strong and demanded another round. Rui teased that if Airi lost again, maybe she could give her a shoulder rub. Meanwhile, Ryouta and Yuria sat on the bed. Yuria apologized for earlier, explaining she had to be strict given the situation. He assured her it was fine, adding with a self-deprecating smile that an introvert like him watching that kind of stuff only made him seem more like a creep. Yuria, blushing, confessed awkwardly that she had watched the same one before. He was stunned and thought that was fate. She immediately rejected that kind of fate. He remarked that she was not just about boob kyun, and that she watched that kind of stuff too. Flustered, she admitted girls watched that kind of content more than people thought, though maybe not someone like Airi, and added that perhaps she just had a pretty high sex drive. They both blushed intensely before she abruptly declared they should drop it, complaining that the sweat was making her bra see-through. He fixated on the phrase, see-through. She then asked why Volume 1 of Lucky Plus H was missing from his shelf. He replied that it had been a long time, and he did not remember, since he had bought it ages ago. She awkwardly noted it was from when they were in elementary school. He offered her Inago 1000% if she wanted something similar. She quickly declined, saying it had just caught her eye. Yuria suggested they should probably rejoin the others before Airi sulked. In the background, Airi complained about losing 20 times in a row and begged Rui to go easy. Rui laughed. Yuria told Airi not to get mad and scolded Rui for being immature. Airi protested that if Rui was being immature, did that make her a child? He silently agreed. Yuria awkwardly deflected. Airi then suggested they play something for 4 people, like a party game, and insisted Ryouta join too. Standing close to him, she asked if they seriously had no intention of reading the script. All 3 girls replied nope. He thought that was just like them. Airi suddenly asked Ryouta if he had a trash can, because she wanted to throw away the snack wrappers. He handed one to her, saying it was there. As she looked inside, she thanked him but then froze, staring at a blue bag. She muttered that it could not be what she thought. Ryouta asked what was wrong, calling her Miyama. Blushing, she quickly insisted it was nothing and claimed she had just thought you did not often see blue bags like that. He questioned whether that was so. Sitting down on his bed, he asked what they should play next. Airi excitedly said she wanted to play Life Sugoroku, noting that it looked like 4 people could play. Rui commented that, if she remembered correctly, the game even allowed players to marry each other. Both Airi and Yuria visibly reacted. Airi hesitantly asked if it had that kind of feature. Yuria, blushing, remarked that Rui sure seemed to know a lot. Ryouta sensed a strange atmosphere and wondered what this vibe was. Airi declared that she wanted to become super rich, so she would study a lot in the game. Yuria teased that it was the total opposite of real life. Airi asked if Yuria had said something, and Yuria quickly denied it, stating she was keeping it realistic and would polish her looks like crazy. She then asked Rui what she would choose. Rui calmly replied that she would probably go with talent. Ryouta thought that answer was so, like Kuroki. As the game entered the adult phase, Airi complained loudly that she did not have any money. Ryouta realized this was the adult stage, and remembered there was a marriage option. He wondered what the 3 of them were planning to do. Rui hummed thoughtfully, and announced that she would propose to Ryouta-kun, since they were playing princess and prince in the play anyway. Ryouta shouted in shock. Yuria, blushing, declared that she was a prince too, so she would choose Ryouta. He protested weakly. Airi immediately followed, announcing that she would propose to him as well. Overwhelmed, he stammered at the 3 of them. Rui said that if he married her, he would never have to work again because she would take care of him. Airi objected that it was not fair and promised that if he married her, she would cook delicious food for him every day. Yuria shyly added that she would do the housework properly, and that she wanted kids too. Ryouta was stunned, thinking this had turned into a full appeal showdown. Marriage was supposed to be in-game only. Still, he could not help imagining what it would be like to marry each of them. If it were Kuroki, he pictured her gently teasing him for staying home playing games without working, yet saying it was enough just to have him there. No matter how he imagined it, she seemed like the type who would support him for life. She was perfect, and married life would probably be amazing. Yet she was also mysterious, and he felt that if he let his guard down, she might dominate him completely. Then he imagined Miyama welcoming him home brightly. He thought Miyama was easy to read, and considering her situation, it made him want to be the one supporting her instead. He even imagined letting her eat as much as she wanted, thinking that someday she might become unbelievably huge. Suddenly, Yuria pinched his cheek and accused him of having pervy eyes. He cried out in pain. His thoughts shifted again. If he married Yuria, perhaps she would offer him ear cleaning or suggest playing games together. He reflected that they were a great match in both hobbies and personality, and her alluring thighs alone were worth 1,000,000 points. His only concern was that if they got married, she might stop being a gyaru. Then she would simply become a perfect, ridiculously gorgeous wife. When he snapped out of his thoughts, he realized all three girls were staring at him. As he opened his eyes fully, he saw their faces were extremely close. Startled, he asked what was going on. Yuria leaned in and asked him who he was picking out of them. Airi urged him to hurry up and choose already. Rui laughed softly and said there was no need to even think about it. Ryouta panicked internally, thinking this was the ultimate choice. It was just a game, but no matter who he chose, the other two would likely give him nasty looks. Still, if he wanted to keep the game going, he had to choose. Airi pressed him to hurry. He began hesitantly, saying that he would. At that exact moment, Kaned burst through the door, apologizing for interrupting. She froze mid-sentence, stammering incoherently as she saw him surrounded by all three girls. Blushing furiously, she exclaimed that Ryouta-kun was really doing something inappropriate with all four of them. He immediately denied it. She wailed that he had changed. He shouted back that he absolutely had not. Then the scene continued with Ryouta, still tense, demanding to know what Kanade meant by really doing it. Kanade explained that she had run into his older sister earlier, who had told her not to ask anything and to just use a key and go into his place. Realizing this, Ryouta internally cursed his sister for causing the misunderstanding. From behind, Airi spoke up, prompting Kanade to turn around. Airi recognized her as Tanaka-san from the same class the previous year. Yuria added that she was the girl who was always reading books. Rui then questioned why Kanade was casually entering Ryuta's house. Panicking, Kanade nervously explained that, as an introverted girl, sharing the same space as bright and beautiful girls like them made her feel as though she did not even deserve to breathe the same air. Ryouta thought she was overreacting, but then wondered if Kanade had some kind of connection with the three girls. Concluding that he had no choice, he decided to leave things to her. Grabbing Kanade by the shoulder, he told her to play the game for him. Confused, she questioned him, but he immediately ran off, saying he was going to the bathroom. Airi scolded him for running away, and Yuria called after him not to escape. Inside the bathroom, Ryouta thought that although he had left it to Kanade, there was still a chance they might wait for him and not choose. As he returned toward the room, he resolved that if that happened, he would just have to face it. However, when he entered and apologized for keeping them waiting, he was met with a shocking sight. Kanade was lying on Airi's lap, playfully asking her to feed her a snack while saying "AA." Airi, slightly exasperated, went along with it. Ryouta realized that Kanade had chosen Miyama in his place, and even so, he could not help but think it looked far too enviable and wished he could switch places with her. Kanade laughed, but Yuria, with a tense expression, remarked that this person was seriously gross. Rui also sternly told Ryouta to kick Kanade out immediately. He realized they were completely put off by her behavior. The game continued, and Yuria complained in disbelief about ending up as a comedian. Airi happily announced that she had got third place and become a model. Rui teased Yuria, suggesting she should try becoming a comedian. Yuria snapped back, telling her to be quiet, pointing out that just because Rui had become an inventor did not mean anything, and reminding Airi that she had wanted to become rich. Airi casually replied that she had realized love mattered more than money in this world, addressing Kanade. She grabbed Kanade, who enthusiastically declared that she would shower Airi with as much money as she wanted. Yuria internally thought that was simply gross. Airi then admitted that, honestly, instead of Kanade, she had wanted Ryouta himself to make the choice. Kanade was shocked. Ryouta was caught off guard, and Airi explained that she wanted to know who he would choose as his bride. As he hesitated, Yuria demanded to know if he had some kind of problem with them. He quickly denied it and explained that choosing just one out of three top-tier beauties like them was too much for any normal guy. All three girls blushed deeply. Kanade gasped and teasingly remarked that the three of them were all so easy. Immediately, Yuria told her to shut up, Rui told her to be quiet, and Airi scolded her for being too loud. Startled by the backlash, Kanade panicked and pleaded with Airi to call her Kanade-chan instead. Airi bluntly stated that it was already over, leaving Kanade in despair. Rui then checked the time on her phone and noted it was close to 6 p.m., suggesting that it was time for everyone to head home. Airi protested, saying she wanted to have a sleepover like this. Ryouta immediately objected. Yuria warned Airi that if she did that, Ryouta might try something perverted. Embarrassed, he thought she should not talk about him like he was some kind of repeat offender. Yuria then agreed it was time to go home, and Ryouta awkwardly agreed. At the door, as Airi and Yuria were leaving, he reminded them that starting the next day, they would begin preparing for the school festival, and that he needed to read through the script. Yuria casually responded that she got it, waving with a smile. Airi also smiled and said goodbye before leaving. Once they were gone, Ryouta turned back toward his room, sighing that it had been an unbelievably hectic after-school time, and that he would go back and read the script. Just then, Rui called out to him from behind. Startled, he turned as she explained she had left something in his room and asked if she could go up. He hesitantly agreed but questioned if that was really true. She teasingly asked if he was doubting her. He denied it but internally suspected she had a reason for suggesting they hang out in his room, wondering if she had been aiming to get him alone. Rui laughed and playfully suggested that perhaps he was expecting something, that she had left something behind on purpose to be alone with him and planned to do something strange. Flustered, he reacted, but she brushed it off, saying she would simply grab what she forgot and head home. As she walked ahead of him, he wondered when she had noticed his thoughts. Pausing on the stairs, she glanced back and asked if he had enjoyed today. As he followed her upstairs, he replied that he had had a decent time, then asked if coming to his room had not bothered her, suggesting she might be forcing herself for the sake of her perfection. Opening the door, she smiled and told him he still did not get it. Confused, he repeated her words. She took out her phone and clarified that while she had said she needed him for the sake of her own perfection, what she really meant was that she needed him so she could continue being perfect. He was left confused, thinking he had no idea what that meant. She remarked that she had expected him to figure it out quickly, since he was surprisingly smart, but apparently not. Near the door, she laughed softly and said that side of him was interesting too. She then added that once the school festival was over, she would explain what it truly meant and encouraged him to do his best in the school festival play, calling him Princess. He awkwardly agreed, and she left. The scene then shifted to Ryouta sitting in his room, frustrated that her cryptic words were bothering him so much that he could not focus on the script. Time passed as they continued practicing until finally the day of the school festival arrived. That morning, while eating, Ryouta continued reading the script and asked his sister to finish the rest of his breakfast for him. She agreed but asked if he had no appetite. He admitted he was too nervous to eat. As he left the house, he thought that for an introvert like him, acting in front of people was too much pressure. But there was no point regretting it now. He sighed and headed out. Outside, he saw Rui and Yuria waiting. Rui greeted him, and Yuria noted that Airi had overslept. He awkwardly greeted them back. Yuria pointed out that he seemed a little late, and he explained it had taken him a while to get ready. Yuria questioned why, since there were no textbooks to pack on a festival day. Rui lightly teased that, as a boy, he probably had all sorts of things going on. Ryouta internally panicked, thinking she had the wrong idea. Rui then asked if he noticed anything different about her today. Confused, he asked what she meant. She leaned in close, making him flustered, and pointed out her lips, saying she had put something on them. He observed they looked slightly red. Smiling, she grabbed his shoulder and revealed that since they had a kissing scene that day, she had worn her favorite lip gloss. Shocked, he shouted in disbelief, asking what she was saying. Yuria, also blushing, asked if Rui was actually planning to kiss him for real. Rui laughed and said she was just joking, that the kiss would only be pretend, just like in rehearsal, and the lip gloss was just for a change of pace. She teased Yuria for getting worked up. Yuria, slightly embarrassed, turned it back on Ryouta, asking if he had seemed a little happy just now. He denied it. Rui teased him further, asking if he had wanted her to steal his first kiss. He firmly rejected that idea. As they walked, Ryouta thought that, technically, his indirect first kiss had already been with Miyama. Yuria then admitted she was genuinely looking forward to the play, saying her Snow White had been pretty cute in rehearsal. Rui hugged his arm and agreed, suggesting they take a picture together once he was in costume. Yuria joined in, suggesting they take a video too. Flustered, he refused and urged them to hurry to school instead. They agreed, and the three of them walked on together. Arriving at the school, they saw a board announcing the festival at Prefectural Natsuhama Central High School. Ryouta commented that it finally felt like a festival and wondered if their class had started preparing. Yuria replied that they probably had, reminding them that their play was second in the program and they needed to hurry. Inside Class 2B, students were actively preparing, discussing costume adjustments and stage timing. Seeing this, Ryouta felt his nerves spike again. Just then, Airi arrived, calling out to them. Yuria scolded her for being late on such an important day. Airi apologized and told Ryouta that they wanted Dwarf Airi and Snow White Ryouta to go around promoting the show, handing him his costume. He agreed, and Airi excitedly grabbed his hand, telling him it was time to get changed. He protested as she dragged him along. The scene shifted to the boys' washroom, where Ryouta struggled with his cross-dressing outfit, muttering that it felt impossible. Looking at himself in the mirror, he admitted that, being slim, he might actually look somewhat like a girl. Someone called out, asking if he was done changing, and he replied that he was coming out. Later, Airi wondered if enough people would come despite all their promotion. He reassured her it would be fine, though internally he believed people would come to see the three beauties, while he would just be a laughingstock and drag. He questioned what it even meant to have a lead role. Airi asked if he was nervous, noting he would be on stage soon. He admitted he was a little nervous, but said no one would really be watching him anyway. Airi looked stunned and then admitted she was nervous too. She grabbed his hand and guided it to her chest, blushing, telling him to feel how fast her heart was beating. He was overwhelmed by the softness and the moment. She confessed that she normally did not get nervous, but thinking about not wanting to mess up in front of him had made her anxious. He responded that even if she did mess up, he would not make fun of her. She agreed but said she had realized something when she visited his house the other day. Before she could finish, a male classmate called them, saying it was time for their class to gather. Ryouta responded that they were coming and asked her what she had been about to say. Flustered, Airi dismissed it, claiming it was nothing, then blushingly declared that going to his house had made her feel like she could not lose to him before running off. Two male classmates then teased Ryouta, calling him cute and saying they wanted to pat his head. Embarrassed, he told them to stop. Just then, Yuria called his name and suddenly hugged him. The classmates reacted in surprise. Blushing, Yuria asked how she looked. Ryouta sincerely told her she looked 100 times cooler than him and that they were on completely different levels, making him feel like he had already lost. Relieved, she thanked him and, slightly shy, told him he looked cute too with the red ribbon. Then, with a playful smile, she extended her hand and, in a princely manner, asked Snow White if she could have the honor of accompanying her to the stage. Completely flustered, he thought she looked incredibly cool in menswear and accepted. The scene shifted to the auditorium as another class's play was announced. Ryouta sat reading his script, realizing their turn was next. His nerves intensified as his confidence began to fade. Rui approached from behind, laughing softly, and remarked that he looked very nervous. He noticed how cool she looked in menswear as well. He warned her not to make fun of him if he messed up. She responded that she did not seem like the type to tease him to death and sat beside him. She reassured him that once the play started, it would be over quickly, but asked if he was still nervous. He admitted he was. She teased that she thought he had more guts than this, pointing out that he could talk to them normally. He blushed, thinking that was only because he knew her secret. She encouraged him to be more confident and then, blushing slightly, proposed that if the first performance went well, then for the second show in the afternoon, she might give him a real kiss. Then the scene continued with Rui leaning closer and saying that if the first show went well, she would give him a real kiss in the afternoon performance. Ryouta, completely flustered, reacted by asking what she meant and telling her not to be ridiculous, adding that messing with an introvert at a time like that was too much. At that moment, a girl called out for Class 2B to get ready. Ryouta panicked, realizing it was already time, and tried to call out to Rui. Rui simply laughed, stood up from her chair, and admitted that she had just been joking earlier. She explained that she thought it might help take his mind off things a little. Confused, he questioned what that was even supposed to be. However, he admitted internally that Rui's teasing had actually calmed him down slightly. He then thanked her, and she replied that he was welcome. The stage announcer introduced Class 2B's performance, Snow White, as the audience applauded. Ryouta stood on stage as the narration began, describing Snow White living in a castle in a certain kingdom and being known for her beautiful fair skin. The audience murmured, and Ryouta thought they could stare all they wanted. He acknowledged that his acting was not great and his voice was not very loud, but he resolved to pull it off, finish quickly, and return to his peaceful life. He delivered his line about his days in the castle being the same and wanting to meet his prince someday, all while blushing and thinking how incredibly embarrassing it was. However, he realized Rui had been right once it started. He was not that nervous. The king's line followed, asking who was the fairest in the world. Some girls in the audience commented that the play was gender-swapped and found it hilarious. Another agreed. Then came the line telling Snow White to flee to the forest. Airi entered energetically, commenting on Snow White's refined face and inviting him to stay at the dwarf's house. Ryouta internally noted that she was still a complete mess, even during the actual performance. She continued acting, inviting him inside and feeding him while telling him to open wide. Other girls added lines about rubbing his shoulders and cleaning his ears, which made him blush intensely as he wondered how it had turned into a harem. The narration continued, explaining that Snow White was enjoying a carefree life in the dwarf's house until one day, the witch appeared and offered him an apple. Ryouta thought he would just eat it and lie down, but then noticed Yuria staring at him and was momentarily confused. The witch prompted him again, and he responded. She handed him the apple, and after he took a bite, it fell as he collapsed to the ground. The witch laughed and declared Snow White dead, claiming to be the most beautiful. Lying there, Ryouta thought about how the mat smelt like sweat and urged Yuria internally to hurry. Yuria then entered, saying she had let her horse wander and ended up in the forest, surprised to find a house there. The audience reacted loudly, clearly excited by her appearance. Ryouta noted how much the girls in the audience adored her. Yuria observed that Snow White was not breathing and declared she would perform artificial respiration. Ryouta slightly opened his eyes and thought about how nice she smelt. She told him softly to keep his eyes closed, and he complied while blushing, thinking about how close her face was. She admitted that she had always thought she had a decent amount of nerve, but the moment she looked at his face, she realized she could not pull off something sneaky. Confused, he wondered what she meant. Instead of kissing him properly, she leaned in and kissed his cheek. The audience erupted in excitement. Startled, he pulled back, holding his cheek, realizing what had just happened. Seeing her, he thought in shock that it was a kiss. Yuria, touching her lips, asked if he had awakened, staying in character. He, still blushing, thought about how soft her lips had been and responded awkwardly. He thanked the prince, saying her kiss had awakened him, while internally admitting he could not think about anything but her lips. He then continued his line, swearing to love her for the rest of his life. The audience applauded as the announcer declared the end of the morning performance. Rui stood nearby while a girl commented on how cool she had looked. A boy announced that there would be free time until the afternoon show, and another student responded enthusiastically. The scene shifted to Ryouta in the washroom, sighing that he just had to survive one more round. As he stepped out, Airi called out to him, and Rui welcomed him back, praising his performance. Airi excitedly said he had been amazing. He awkwardly thanked them while thinking that, for him, it was just another addition to his personal embarrassment. He then asked where Yuria was. Airi explained that she was doing a photo shoot with her fans behind the gym, and that there had been too many people for her to join. Ryouta thought that was insane. Airi suggested going to the maid cafe run by Kaned's class. Ryouta said he needed to put his costume away first, and asked them to go ahead. Airi agreed, and Rui told him to join them soon. They walked away, Airi waving, and he waved back before leaning against a wall, wondering if Yuria had finished yet. Suddenly, two girls approached him, recognizing him as Snow White. They excitedly asked to take a picture. Embarrassed, he tried to refuse while covering his face, thinking that if those pictures spread online, he would be in serious trouble. Yuria suddenly intervened, telling them firmly that it was not happening and that Ryouta was not okay with having his picture taken. She added that they could post as many pictures of her as they wanted, but Ryouta was shy, so they should go easy on him. The girls apologized and left. Afterward, Yuria commented that he had looked like he was enjoying the attention. He admitted that maybe he had been, just a little. She sighed, saying that was exactly what was wrong with him, but then added that he had actually looked pretty good on stage and had settled into the role, allowing her to watch without stress. She also admitted she had been nervous, mentioning that people had said her eyes looked scary right before she went on stage. Then, blushing, she brought up the kiss from earlier. She quickly clarified that it had basically been a reward, since he had been trying hard but seemed nervous, so she decided to tease him a little. Relieved, he said that was all it was. She confirmed it was nothing strange. However, she leaned in again and asked if he had been happy about it. Blushing deeply, he admitted honestly that since he had never been kissed before, it had excited him. Shocked and embarrassed, she immediately declared she would never kiss him again. Trying to move past it, he suggested they go check out the maid cafe run by Tanaka's class, mentioning that the others were already there. She hesitated, saying that maid outfits brought back bad memories. When he asked why, She explained that the previous year she had worn a maid outfit for a cosplay cafe, but the skirt had been quite short. Blushing, she admitted her thighs were somewhat thick. He internally thought they were far more than just somewhat. She continued, explaining that although she had already bought it, she wore it anyway, but it made her thighs stand out too much. The teacher said it was too suggestive, so she was the only one made to work in a plain tracksuit, which she described as the worst experience. Awkwardly, he asked if there was any chance she could wear that maid outfit now. She immediately rejected the idea with a sharp expression. He apologized. As they walked, she admitted she understood how he felt and added that if he came over to her place sometime, she could wear it for him then. Without hesitation, he said he would go. She instantly reacted, calling his response gross. The scene then shifted to before the afternoon performance. Ryouta stood in the washroom again, sighing and reminding himself that he only had one more performance left. He admitted internally that he was starting to get used to cross-dressing. As he stepped out, Rui noticed him and commented that he looked like Snow White. He was once again struck by how cool she looked in menswear. She teased him for being too shocked, and he admitted she looked too cool not to be surprised. He reflected that her athletic build made her look natural even dressed as a boy, reinforcing her image as a perfect all-rounder. She extended her hand and told him it was time to go. They moved to the auditorium, where Yuria commented on how large the audience was, even noting there was a standing crowd. Ryouta remarked that the Kuroki effect was insane and felt the pressure intensify. Yuria reassured him, patting his back and telling him that the morning show had gone well, so he just needed to endure one more time. He agreed nervously. The announcer introduced their gender-swapped Snow White, and the audience applauded again. As the narration began, Ryouta delivered his lines more smoothly, realizing he had gotten used to it compared to earlier. The story progressed, with Snow White being brought into the forest and told to flee. Airi entered again, but this time her costume malfunctioned as a button on her chest came undone and fell. She froze briefly, blushing, while the audience murmured. Despite that, she continued acting, holding her clothes while delivering her lines and inviting Snow White to the dwarf's house. Ryouta was shocked but thought she had somehow managed to pull it off. She resumed feeding him, and another girl offered to rub his shoulders. Ryouta tried to pretend he had not seen anything. Airi leaned close and whispered in his ear not to stare too much, which only made him more conscious of it. She then continued her line, saying they were heading to work and asking him to watch the house. The witch appeared again, asking for help and offering the apple. Ryouta collapsed once more as the witch declared Snow White dead and praised her poison apple. He realized the lines had changed slightly from the first performance. Hearing footsteps, he understood that Rui was about to enter. Rui entered confidently, delivering her lines about wandering into the forest. The audience reacted loudly. Even while lying down, Ryouta was impressed, recognizing her performance as something refined through constant pursuit of perfection. She noticed Snow White and remarked on finding a beautiful woman there. He internally prepared himself as she approached. She observed that Snow White was not breathing and declared she would perform artificial respiration. As she leaned closer, his heart raced. Seeing her face so close, he wondered if she was actually going to do it this time or if she was just pretending, blushing intensely as the moment built. Ryouta kept his eyes shut, his face red as well. Rui moved in until their faces were nearly touching, even parting her lips slightly, causing the audience to erupt in excitement. Then she suddenly pulled back. Ryouta slowly opened his eyes and thought that they had only been pretending to kiss. A perfectionist like Kuroki would never break character. Rui then stood and offered him her hand, asking if he had awakened, princess. Ryouta thought that he had to meet that perfection with everything he had. Taking her hand, he thanked her and declared that her kiss had awakened him. Suddenly, the lights flickered before the entire auditorium went dark. Confused murmurs spread backstage as staff shouted that the breaker might have tripped and told someone to check the gym's distribution board. Ryouta immediately told Rui that they should wait until the lights came back. Rui silently nodded while the audience murmured in confusion. A voice from backstage soon announced that the lights were coming back on. As illumination returned, Ryouta resumed the scene, once again thanking Rui and repeating that her kiss had awakened him. However, when he looked at Rui, he realized she was completely frozen. Her expression was tense, and he immediately wondered if she had forgotten her line. He rejected the thought at first, believing Kuroki would never make such a mistake. But the more he looked at her face, the more obvious it became. Ryouta quickly realized that if she truly had forgotten her line, he was the only person on stage who could help her. However, whispering the line directly would allow the front row to hear, which would damage Rue's image of perfection. He considered covering for her with improvisation, but feared that would only make her panic more. He concluded that he first needed to calm her down and get the script back on track. If it had come to this, he would have to gamble. Clenching his fist, he suddenly grabbed Rui by the shoulders. Airi and Yuria gasped in shock while blushing. Rui herself blushed deeply as Ryouta pulled her down with him, their faces inches apart. Internally, he noted that his hair was covering their faces, meaning no one in the audience would realize Rui had forgotten her line. Rui, flustered, quietly called his name. Ryouta then loudly improvised, declaring that no thanks were necessary because he had simply been drawn to her beauty. At the same time, he whispered for her to sit up and continue acting exactly like she had earlier, reminding her to keep her perfection intact. Rui quietly responded with a soft okay and smiled. Ryouta pulled back, relieved that they had somehow made it through. Now all that remained was Rui's next line. Rui suddenly laughed, winked, and placed a hand near her lips, before declaring that she had never imagined receiving such a passionate kiss from the princess herself, and that there could be no greater happiness. Ryouta froze internally at the word kiss. The audience immediately exploded with excitement, loudly reacting as though the two had truly kissed. He instinctively tried to deny it, but immediately realized it was useless because everyone had already accepted it as reality. Looking toward the back, he saw Yuria and Airi glaring angrily and realized things were going to be terrible once the play ended. Rui then gracefully offered him her hand again and declared that no thanks were needed for saving him because she had simply been drawn to his beauty. Ryouta internally panicked, realizing Rui had completely recovered. He briefly wondered whether her earlier stumble had somehow been part of the performance, but quickly dismissed that idea. Still, he admitted to himself that with this recovery, nobody would suspect Rui had ever faltered. Taking her hand, he declared that he was grateful for their meeting and swore to love her for the rest of his life. The audience applauded loudly as the announcer declared Class 2B's play concluded. As Ryouta exited the stage, a girl commented that what he had done was bold, while a boy warned him not to get carried away. Internally, Ryouta complained that he had only done it because he had no choice and thought the entire situation was unfair. Suddenly, someone kicked the wall directly in front of him, startling him. He looked up to see Yuria glaring at him angrily as she declared that she would be waiting by the gym exit once he finished changing. Airi also appeared with an angry expression, warning him that they were going to have a very long talk later. Ryouta thought both of them looked terrifying. Yuria then shouted at him to hurry up and return his costume. Panicking, he immediately saluted and ran off, yelling, "Yes, ma'am." As he hurried away, he internally cursed the entire mess. However, he also realized that nobody had mentioned Rui's mistake. That meant her perfection had been preserved, and he decided that was good enough. After changing and returning the costume, Ryouta returned and apologized for making everyone wait. However, he froze when he realized only Rui was standing there. Confused, he called out to her. Rui smiled and praised him for his hard work. Ryouta then asked where the other two were. Rui explained that she had asked Airi and Yuria to wait on the rooftop because she had told them the two of them would buy food before having an after-party together there afterward. Ryouta questioned what kind of setup that even was, then said they should hurry and buy something. However, Rui suddenly grabbed his hand. Turning back toward her, he saw her blushing as she suggested they stop by the classroom for a little chat first. The scene shifted to the Class 2B classroom. Ryouta asked what she wanted to talk about, admitting he could already guess. Rui laughed softly before thanking him for helping her earlier. Blushing, Ryouta asked if she had really forgotten her line. Rui teasingly responded that she wondered about that. Ryouta protested, asking if she had any idea how much he had panicked. Rui laughed again and remarked that he really did keep saving her. Confused, he asked if she was talking about what had happened during their middle school graduation ceremony. She confirmed it and asked whether he had heard the story from Yuzuki from the broadcasting club. Ryouta recalled that Rui had forgotten the manuscript for the farewell address, but because he had collapsed during the ceremony, everything had been delayed long enough for the manuscript to arrive in time. Rui confirmed that was exactly what happened. She explained that despite being student council president, she had been so overwhelmed with club activities at the time that she had not even reviewed the speech properly. When she realized the manuscript was missing, she panicked because she feared the perfect image she had built would collapse. She admitted it had been the most panic she had ever felt, but in the end, Ryouta had saved her. Smiling sincerely, she explained that the perfect version of herself that existed now was because of him. If she had failed back then and lost confidence, she might not be who she was today. Embarrassed, Ryouta insisted that it was not as though he had done it intentionally. Rui immediately teased him for acting tsundere. He loudly denied being one. However, Rui added that it was not the only time he had saved her. Confused, he admitted he did not remember anything else. Rui then revealed that the other time had been back in elementary school. Ryouta was stunned because they had attended different elementary schools. Rui told him to remember the story she had mentioned before about a cat escaping in a parking lot in the next town. Ryouta acknowledged it. Rui explained that although he had not reacted before, the truth was that the person who had saved her family's cat back then had been him. Shocked, Ryouta questioned whether it had really been him. Internally, he vaguely recalled going to the next town often during elementary school and felt like something like that may actually have happened. Rui then reminded him that he used to leave his name tag on even after school during elementary school. Startled, he asked how she knew that. Realizing the implication, he trailed off. Smiling, Rui explained that his name had been written right there on the tag, Izumiya Ryouta. Ryouta internally groaned as the circumstantial evidence piled up, realizing he truly had been the one who helped her. Rui explained that she had been on the verge of tears back then, but when he caught the cat for her, he had saved her. Still confused, Ryouta pointed out that if she had known his name for that long, why had she not talked to him until their second year of high school? Rui visibly flinched before hurriedly explaining that she thought it might have been another person with the same name, and that back then she had still been a maiden in progress, meaning she had not yet become perfect. Ryouta internally noted that her explanation made absolutely no sense. Rui quickly declared that was enough old stories. Confused, he repeated, enough? She then reminded him of what she had told him earlier, that she needed him in order to keep being perfect. Placing a hand over her chest, Rui sincerely explained that when she was with him, she felt like she could continue being her perfect self forever, eternally, for her whole life. Blushing heavily, Ryouta became overwhelmed by the implication of, for her whole life. At this point, he began thinking this sounded exactly like a love confession. Rui then stepped closer and, while blushing, told him she wanted him to stay by her side from now on. Ryuta's mind spiraled. He wondered if she meant dating. He admitted internally that although he would absolutely be happy dating Rui, his heart was not prepared for something like that yet. Rui moved even closer. Ryouta backed away nervously while stammering her name. Rui grabbed his shoulders and softly whispered, Ryouta-kun, directly into his ear. Ryouta internally panicked, convinced that at this distance a kiss was definitely coming. Even though things were moving too fast for his brain to process, he believed it simply meant Rui felt that strongly about him. Closing his eyes, he resolved himself to properly accept her feelings with everything he had. Then, Rui suddenly declared that for this year's Student Council President election, if she became Student Council President, she wanted him to become her Vice President. Ryouta froze completely before shouting in utter disbelief that she wanted him to become Student Council Vice President. Rui calmly confirmed it. Panicking, Ryouta protested that it was impossible for someone like him, and insisted there had to be people much more suited for the role. Rui immediately rejected that idea and firmly stated that there were not she needed him more than anyone else. Ryouta realized her determination was absolute. Even if he refused, she probably would not change her mind. However, he also thought that an introvert joining the student council was impossible. Acting in Snow White had only been for self-preservation. He had never wanted to stand out again. As he tried to refuse, Rui's phone suddenly rang. She apologized and answered it, revealing it was Airi calling. While Rui turned away to talk, Ryouta thought deeply about whether he could actually do anything for someone as perfect as Rui, even if he became vice president. He acknowledged that he had saved her several times, but still felt that appointing him vice president because of that was far too simplistic. Supporting someone like Rui felt beyond his abilities. After finishing the call, Rui apologized and explained that Airi wanted them to hurry to the rooftop. Ryouta tried to continue the conversation, but Rui suddenly pressed a finger gently against his lips to silence him. She explained that the election was not until autumn, so there was still time. She told him to think more carefully about the vice president position and said he could give her his answer after summer break. Blushing, Ryouta realized in shock that she had only postponed the issue rather than abandoning it. He internally acknowledged that Rui had skillfully secured a future answer from him. Rui then casually added one more thing. Until he gave her an answer about becoming vice president, she would take a break from sending selfies. Ryouta reacted in complete horror. Rui innocently asked whether that was a problem. Internally, Ryouta panicked because Rui's selfies had recently become part of his daily routine. If she stopped until autumn, then he would miss all the summer selfies he had been looking forward to, especially the tan track club selfies with visible midriff. To him, it became a life-or-death situation. As Rui began suggesting they hurried to meet the others, Ryouta suddenly grabbed her hand and stopped her. With a tense expression, he declared that he would seriously consider the vice president position after all, so could she please not stop sending selfies? Rui looked at him and laughed softly before teasing him, saying that even though he claimed not to like her, he still looked at her in a lewd way. Ryouta panicked and loudly denied it. Rui then grabbed his shoulder and leaned close to whisper directly into his ear that he was the worst, Ryouta-kun. Blushing furiously, Ryouta internally exploded, overwhelmed by what he described as a live insult ASMR. He trembled so hard that he collapsed onto the floor in bliss. Meanwhile, Rui casually walked away, reminding him that until he decided whether or not he would become vice president, she still would not send him any selfies. Ryouta froze before shouting in despair. Still lying on the ground, he thought that accepting the vice president role would be hell, but refusing it would mean losing his selfie supply, which was another kind of hell entirely. Shaking dramatically, he wondered what would happen to his school life and, more importantly, to the future of Naval Peak selfies. Then the scene shifted to Rui and Ryouta walking up the stairs toward the rooftop. Rui wondered aloud if the other two were already tired of waiting for them. Ryouta walked beside her with a tense expression, internally lamenting that Kuroki had stopped sending him her midriff selfies. To him, it was simply too shocking. Rui looked at him and commented that he seemed kind of out of it. She then pointed out that they were already at the rooftop. Opening the rooftop door, they were immediately greeted by Airi, who happily waved them over and shouted for them to come there. Yuria added that they could see the campfire really well from that spot. Rui apologized for being late, still looking tense. Airi cheerfully replied that it was fine since the two of them had been picking out food for everyone anyway, adding that she was already starving. Rui hesitantly apologized again and admitted that they had ended up not buying the food after all. Airi complained jokingly that Rui-chan was so clumsy. Ryouta then realized that Rui had originally used shopping as an excuse to send Airi and Yuria to the rooftop first. He thought that he had completely forgotten their original objective, but wondered if Kuroki had also forgotten because she was nervous. He immediately rejected that possibility. Rui then suggested that to make up for it, she and Airi would go buy food now instead. Airi happily hugged Rui and declared that it would be Rui-chan's treat. Ryouta told them to have a safe trip as the two girls left. The rooftop became quiet, leaving Ryouta and Yuria alone. Internally, he thought the atmosphere was painfully awkward. He wondered if she was about to ask him about pushing Kuroki down during the play in order to hide her mistake. Judging by her expression, he assumed she was probably angry. Yuria finally brought up that scene, causing Ryouta to flinch. Blushing, she instead asked what he and Rui had been doing alone together until now. Ryouta internally thought that it was finally coming. Yuria pointed out that he had told them to head to the rooftop first because he and Rui were supposedly going shopping, so the fact that they had returned empty-handed was suspicious. Ryouta realized she had a point. Yuria then nervously asked whether it had something to do with him pushing Rui down during the play. With a tense expression, Ryouta admitted that it was not entirely unrelated. He explained that the stage had suddenly gone pitch black and the lights had come back on abruptly, so Kuroki had lost her balance. According to him, pretending to push her down for a kiss had simply been his way of helping her recover. He even added that Kuroki herself had thanked him for it. Yuria quietly responded that she understood. Ryouta asked if she finally got it now. She apologized, admitting she had completely misunderstood the situation. She confessed that she had thought his lust had gotten out of control in the middle of the play and that he had used the scene as an excuse to push Rui down. Blushing, Ryouta protested that her assumption was completely prejudiced and asked if she really thought he was the incarnation of lust itself. Still blushing, Yuria replied that he basically was, pointing out how he was always staring at her thighs with lustful eyes. Ryouta awkwardly admitted that he could not completely deny that part. Yuria immediately told him he should at least deny it a little. Then, more softly, she admitted she was relieved because after seeing what happened on stage, she had worried that he and Rui had run off on some kind of rendezvous together. Ryouta denied it immediately, insisting there was no way Kuroki could pull off something like that anyway. Yuria agreed and commented that Ryouta would probably be better off pursuing someone closer to him instead. Ryouta repeated the words, "closer to me," thoughtfully before changing the topic, and asking whether Yuria needed to help prepare for the campfire, since she was on the executive committee. Yuria casually explained that the girls were mostly assigned accounting-related tasks, so they had been told they did not need to help. Ryouta then asked why she had become an executive committee member in the first place, since she did not really seem like the type. Yuria reacted defensively, claiming she was the kind of girl who stepped up when it counted. Ryouta jokingly asked whether that had been a dirty joke. Blushing furiously, Yuria shouted that it absolutely was not, and told him not to lump her together with him. Ryouta repeated her words internally, thinking she had made it sound as though his very existence was some kind of dirty joke. Yuria then admitted the real reason she joined the executive committee was because it looked like Rui was going to be made one too. Ryouta asked in surprise whether Kuroki had been selected. Yuria explained that their class was always pushing work onto Rui, and even though Rui seemed perfect, she still got tired. Because of that, Yuria thought it would definitely become too much for her, so she joined in hopes of reducing Rui's burden. Ryouta let out a small laugh and thought that it really was all for Kuroki's sake. He remembered that Yuria had also volunteered for the prince role because she wanted to lessen Rui's burden during the play. Smiling, he sincerely told Yuria that she was a really good friend. Blushing hard, Yuria awkwardly asked whether he was praising her. Ryouta confirmed that he was. He admitted he had never really been able to make friends himself and lacked the confidence to go that far for one, so he honestly thought it was amazing. Still blushing, Yuria quietly asked if he really thought so. At that moment, Airi suddenly returned. She excitedly apologized for the wait and explained that there had been a half-price sale on leftovers, so she bought everything. Both Ryouta and Yuria stared at the mountain of food in disbelief and asked what was with that amount. Airi proudly declared that it was because of SDG, something or other. Ryouta corrected her, explaining that it was SDGs. Airi happily agreed and suggested they all eat until the campfire started. Sometime later, an announcer thanked everyone for coming to the cultural festival as applause echoed around the school. Ryouta commented that the festival was really ending, but then stared at Airi and Rui eating and internally wondered how they could possibly eat that much. Looking at Yuria, he questioned why she was not eating more like those two. Blushing heavily, Yuria froze while Rui casually revealed that Yuria had recently been dieting. Yuria immediately shouted at Rui not to say something like that. Rui calmly continued eating her Thomasin and commented on how delicious it was. Yuria complained that Rui-chan was not being fair, and Airi declared that she wanted some Thomasin too before asking Ryouta to pass her one. Ryouta sighed and handed one over. Airi suddenly opened her mouth and told him to feed her by doing ah. Blushing furiously, Ryouta protested that there was no way he could do something that embarrassing. Airi insisted that it was not embarrassing and pointed out that Yuria had just done it with Rui earlier. Ryouta internally thought that Yuria had only done that to shut Rui up. Yuria quickly tried to stop Airi, warning her that Ryouta looked kind of sketchy right now. Airi complained that such reasoning lacked substance. Then, Rui casually remarked that Ryuta's hands had touched all sorts of gross things, so maybe they should not do it. Airi shouted at Rui not to say something so hurtful in such a calm tone. Airi then impatiently demanded that Ryouta hurry up already and closed her eyes expectantly. Ryouta sighed and reluctantly admitted he had no choice. He lifted the Thomasin toward her mouth, and Airi immediately bit into it happily. Watching her chew enthusiastically, Ryouta internally compared her to a dog. Rui quietly repeated, "A dog?" in disbelief. Airi then pulled back and happily declared that Thomasin was delicious. Ryouta asked if it was really that good. Blushing, Airi admitted it might have tasted even better because Ryouta had fed it to her, then thanked him warmly. Ryouta blushed and awkwardly responded that maybe that was true. However, he then noticed Yuria and Rui silently staring at him, and internally thought that their stares genuinely hurt. The scene then shifted to nighttime as the announcer declared that the campfire everyone had been waiting for was about to begin. Couples danced around the fire, while some students sitting on the rooftop clicked their tongues and called them normies. Ryouta internally thought the difference between heaven and hell was way too extreme. Then, someone approached him from behind and commented that this year's cultural festival was coming to an end. Turning around, he saw Rui. Rui quietly remarked that they only had one cultural festival left. Seeing her unexpectedly lonely expression shocked him. Airi asked if Rui-chan was feeling lonely. Rui admitted that she was a little, but added that it had been fun. Airi then enthusiastically declared that choosing to do a play for this year's cultural festival had definitely been the right decision. She explained that although the preparations were hard, acting had been surprisingly fun. She added that she got to see Rui and Yuria in prince outfits, and Ryouta dressed up as a cute girl, making her completely satisfied. Ryouta internally protested that his cross-dressing was obviously just weird. Yuria smiled and agreed with Airi, adding that it was all thanks to Rui suggesting they do a play in the first place. Surprised, Rui questioned whether they really meant her. She pointed out that because of track club she had barely participated in preparations, and had even caused trouble for Yuria with the double casting issue. She insisted she did not deserve their thanks. However, she then admitted that the two of them had worked so hard to make up for everything. So if anything, she was the one who felt grateful to both of them, and to Ryouta as well. Moved, Yuria softly called Rui's name, while Airi did the same. The three girls then hugged each other happily, as Rui laughed warmly. Watching them, Ryouta thought that the three of them really were close friends. However, because they were so close, he felt that they each protected one another's secrets. He reflected on how Miyama secretly worked part-time, how Yuria desperately hid being an otaku, and how Kuroki maintained her perfect image despite her pitch-black side. He concluded that all of them were trying to preserve the relationship they shared. Yuria then commented on how there were a lot of couples around the campfire again this year. Airi immediately announced that she wanted a boyfriend too. Yuria pointed out that Airi already had one. Airi panicked, blushed, and quickly clarified that she meant a boyfriend at the same high school, so they could flirt together during cultural festivals and things like that. Ryouta internally thought she was way too desperate to protect her fake has a boyfriend setting, which she only maintained to protect her part-time job situation. He wondered how nobody had exposed the lie yet, though he also suspected Kuroki might already know. At that moment, he noticed Rui glancing at him with a smile. Blushing, he nervously asked what it was. Rui laughed softly and replied that it was nothing. She simply wondered whether next year one of them might be over there around the campfire too. Airi immediately asked whether Rui-chan liked someone. Rui playfully avoided answering and instead asked Yuria whether she liked anyone. Blushing hard, Yuria insisted that she had been saying for a while that she did not really want to talk to guys. Airi immediately pointed out that Yuria talked to Ryouta all the time. Yuria panicked and denied it, insisting she only talked to him because Airi and Rui were always around him, leaving her no choice. Ryouta grinned internally, thinking that despite what she said now, she would probably later admit it was a lie. He genuinely thought this gyaru was way too good. Airi suddenly noticed his grin and called him gross. Ryouta awkwardly replied that he had simply been thinking how wonderful everything was. Yuria immediately demanded to know what exactly was wonderful, and also called him gross. The announcer then declared the end of the day's program, and instructed everyone to make sure the fire was extinguished before heading home. From the rooftop, Ryouta quietly remarked that it was over. Internally, he reflected that the old him would have wanted the cultural festival to end as quickly as possible, but now knowing there was only one left, made him feel a little lonely. He realized that this only proved how much he had enjoyed this year's festival. Then, after a pause, he awkwardly corrected himself internally by saying it had at least been decent. Airi then called out for Ryouta to hurry so they could go home. He replied that he was coming, internally realizing that the reason the festival had been so enjoyable was because those three girls had been there. The four of them then walked home together as Airi suggested, stopping by a convenience store on the way, adding that it would be Ryouta's treat. Ryouta loudly asked why, while Yuria agreed with the idea. The scene then shifted back to Class 2B. Ryouta sat at his desk and reflected that with that, the cultural festival had finally ended, and the classroom had returned to its usual calm atmosphere. Yuria announced that she had errands to run, while Rui mentioned that she had a track club meeting. Ryouta internally thought that having track club immediately after the cultural festival sounded rough. With a tense expression, he thought that he should probably head home too. However, Airi suddenly called out excitedly and asked whether they could walk home together. Surprised, Ryouta awkwardly admitted he did not mind. The scene shifted to nighttime, as Airi happily declared that the cultural festival had been fun. While walking, she enthusiastically added that she wanted to do another play someday. Ryouta immediately declared that he was never doing another play again. Airi complained and insisted it had been fun. Ryouta argued that if they did another gender reversal play, he would just get forced into the princess role again. Airi pouted and admitted she had actually hoped to play the princess next time. Ryouta immediately supported that idea. Excited, Airi asked if he really meant it. Ryouta internally reasoned that if Miyama got to play the princess she wanted, then she would not be forced into the heroine role anymore. He concluded it was a complete win-win situation, and sincerely told her he supported the idea. Airi then happily declared that she would be the princess and Ryouta would play the prince. Blushing furiously, Ryouta immediately protested and asked why it had to be him specifically, insisting anyone else would be fine. Airi stubbornly declared that if Ryouta was not the main character, then she would not do it at all. Ryouta became tense and wondered whether she simply felt comfortable around him because she was used to talking to him now. He then pointed out that they did not even know if they would end up in the same class next year, but reluctantly admitted he would think about it. Excited, Airi celebrated while Ryouta quickly clarified that he had only said he would think about it. Still smiling happily, Airi quietly repeated the word together while thinking about being with Ryouta. Then she suddenly remembered something and called out to him again. Ryouta asked what it was. Blushing slightly, Airi brought up tomorrow after school. Then, with an adorable expression, she asked if she could come over to his house again. The scene then shifted to Ryuta's house. As he looked around his room, he noted that it smelled good. There were no overly obvious otaku goods lying around, and that he would probably need some cushions. Internally, he reminded himself that Miyama was coming to his room today. He recalled Airi asking, "Can I come over to your house, Ryouta?" Blushing, he wondered if Airi coming over meant she was trying to seduce him. Holding a small box in his hands, he quickly insisted to himself that it was only a precaution and that he was not expecting anything. Just then, Airi called from outside the door, asking if he was finished. Stammering, Ryouta replied that he was. Airi immediately opened the door and stepped inside, cheerfully thanking him for having her over and commenting that his room smelled nice. Flustered, he asked if it really did. Opening her bag, Airi announced that they should get started. She pulled out a health and physical education textbook and, with a bright smile, asked if they should begin. Ryouta immediately blushed, thinking that it was finally happening. Then Airi placed several more textbooks on the table and happily revealed that it was going to be a study session for just the two of them. Shocked, Ryouta repeated, "A study session?" Airi nodded and explained that exams were only 2 weeks away. If she got another failing grade, she would be banned from working her part-time job. Ryouta immediately realized that she had not meant practical health and physical education at all. It really was just a study session. Airi stretched comfortably and commented that the air conditioning in his room felt nice and cool. She explained that the air conditioner at her own house was old, caused huge electricity bills, and occasionally malfunctioned. Ryouta internally accepted that it really was only a study session. Considering finals were only 2 weeks away, it made sense. He then asked how many subjects she had failed last time. After thinking for a moment, Airi happily answered that it had been almost all of them. Ryouta immediately concluded that she was doomed. Airi protested, telling him not to give up on her because she had not given up on herself yet. She passionately declared that she was definitely going to avoid failing grades this time because she needed to balance studying and her part-time job. As she spoke energetically, Ryouta found himself distracted by her chest and realized that none of her words were actually registering. Airi pleaded with him to help because she would have to start taking shifts again next week and wanted to get as much studying done as possible today. Ryouta assured her that he would keep his promise. Excited, Airi thanked him enthusiastically. They began studying. Watching her work, Ryouta thought she was surprisingly motivated. He wished she would normally study like this, but then remembered how busy she was with her part-time job. Since she lived alone with her mother, household chores were probably difficult as well. Despite her cheerful attitude, she clearly had a tough life. Because of that, he decided he should be patient with her. Soon, Airi admitted that she did not understand a particular section. When Ryouta asked where, she pointed to the book and declared that she did not understand the entire page. At that moment, Ryouta decided he was going to be strict. Time passed. Eventually, he marked another answer as correct. Airi celebrated happily. Ryouta praised her and pointed out that she really could do it. Laughing proudly, Airi declared that she was actually a professional at cramming. She even boasted that she had passed her high school entrance exams after only 1 week of cramming. Internally, Ryouta questioned whether being a professional at cramming was really something worth bragging about. He also knew that their school was not the type of place someone could enter solely through cramming. Curious, he asked why she had wanted to attend their school so badly. Airi explained that she had mainly wanted to attend a public high school because her family's financial situation made private school difficult. Ryouta agreed that private schools were expensive. Internally, he realized that her desire not to burden her mother had even influenced her choice of school. Combined with her part-time job, he thought Airi was genuinely amazing. Airi admitted that she had struggled ever since entering high school and that her test scores were always terrible. Ryouta pointed out that she had understood everything after he taught her. He praised her as a genius. Surprised, Airi asked if he really thought so. Ryouta explained that she had learned everything in only one day, which he honestly found impressive. Airi immediately got carried away and proudly declared herself a genius. Watching her reaction, Ryouta thought she was becoming way too confident. Then Airi suddenly touched her own head and suggested that, as a reward for working so hard, he should pat her head. Ryouta froze. Internally, he questioned whether she really wanted him to pat her head. He recalled that head patting was a classic light novel scenario, but he had also heard that real girls usually disliked it. However, because Airi could be a bit spoiled, maybe she actually enjoyed that sort of thing. Airi impatiently told him to hurry up. Reluctantly, Ryouta placed his hand on her head. Immediately, he noticed how silky smooth her hair felt and how pleasant her scent was. Airi closed her eyes happily. Blushing, Ryouta thought that her scent alone was enough to make him want to eat plain rice. Airi laughed and commented that head pats really depended on who was giving them. Ryouta jokingly asked whether she was saying his head pats were unsatisfactory. Airi replied that she was not sure, but noted that his hands were surprisingly large and masculine, making her feel safe. While continuing to pat her head, Ryouta changed the topic and asked whether Rui and Yuria had discovered the truth about her rumored boyfriend yet. Opening her eyes, Airi admitted that they still seemed completely oblivious. Ryouta pointed out that she had nearly let it slip recently, and suggested she might want to claim they had broken up before the truth was exposed. Airi immediately rejected the idea, explaining that if she did that, she would lose her excuse whenever she was busy with her part-time job. Internally, Ryouta wondered why she was so determined to keep hiding it. Given how close the three girls were, he was certain they would understand her situation. Then he realized that Airi probably knew that too. Precisely because they would understand, she likely did not want them worrying about her or treating her differently. Continuing to pat her head, Ryouta decided that if this was a secret that such an honest and kind girl wanted to protect, then he would protect it too. After a pause, Airi quietly admitted that if she got a real boyfriend, then it would no longer be a lie and she would not have to feel guilty anymore. Ryouta stopped patting her head. Surprised, he repeated, "A real boyfriend?" Airi immediately panicked, blushed deeply, and insisted they forget she said anything. She hurriedly suggested returning to studying. Ryouta agreed. Seeing how red she looked, he thought that, of course, Airi must have someone she liked. Feeling a little jealous, he called her name. Giving her a thumbs up, he told her he was rooting for her and hoped she found a boyfriend. Airi simply pouted. Confused, Ryouta asked whether she was sleepy. Airi quietly called him an idiot. When he asked what she meant, she firmly declared that the conversation was over and demanded that he explain several more sections immediately. Ryouta reluctantly agreed. Internally, he wondered why she seemed angry. Time passed, and by 7 in the evening, textbooks covered the table. Airi sighed dramatically and declared that her head was about to burst. Looking at her, Ryouta thought he wanted to take a picture of the moment. Sitting beside him, Airi praised his teaching ability and said that even she could understand everything easily. Ryouta asked whether she really thought so. Airi enthusiastically replied that she did and declared that he would probably make a great teacher. Ryouta immediately imagined students complaining that Izumiya-sensei was way too introverted and calling him gross. As a result, he firmly declared there was no way he would ever become a teacher. Airi expressed surprise and insisted she thought he would be really good at it. Then she asked what he wanted to become in the future. Ryouta considered the question and answered that he planned to attend college, get a decent job at a company, and then live quietly after retirement. Airi stared at him in disbelief and exclaimed that was all. She declared that his plan was far too boring. Then she remembered the light novels he always bought and suggested that he become a light novel author instead. Startled, Ryouta repeated the idea. Airi pointed out that he was always reading books in class and was smart, so she was sure he could do it. Ryouta denied it, insisting he only read them as a hobby. Internally, he reflected that becoming a light novel author was not that easy. Even successful authors were not guaranteed popularity, and he could not imagine an ordinary person like himself making an impact in such a world. However, Airi admitted that she wanted to read a novel written by someone kind like him, at least once. That comment made him blush. Airi then asked what kind of story he wanted to write. Embarrassed, Ryouta asked if she promised not to laugh. Airi immediately agreed. Blushing furiously, he admitted that he wanted to write a harem isekai reincarnation story about a protagonist with the supernatural ability to do whatever he wanted with every pair of breasts in the world. Airi stared at him in stunned silence. Then she quietly took out her phone and announced that she was reporting him to Yuria. Panicking, Ryouta begged her not to tell Ichinose. Airi asked whether she should tell Rui instead. Ryouta immediately declared that would be even worse. He reminded her that she had promised not to laugh. Airi shouted that he was a pervert. Ryouta argued that there was nothing wrong with that and claimed erotica was a natural part of creative work. Airi continued calling him a pervert. Then she suddenly froze. Blushing, she asked whether he had been looking at her chest that way too. Covering her chest, she stared at him nervously. Ryouta denied it. Internally, however, he admitted that was a lie. Airi blushed and quietly admitted that if it were any other guy, she would hate it. But if it was Ryouta, she hesitated before explaining that he was her only male friend and that she wanted to become even closer to him from now on. Because of that, she did not mind if he looked. She declared that Ryouta was special. Ryouta internally celebrated, wondering if he had just been officially authorized to stare. Excited, he asked if she really meant it. Airi quickly added that she had one condition. Alarmed, Ryouta asked what it was. Blushing, Airi explained that instead of calling her Miyama, she wanted him to call her Airi from now on. Ryouta immediately realized that not only was she letting him call her by her first name, but she had also effectively given him permission to look at her chest. The offer sounded unbelievably favorable. Since she had also been saying things that sounded suspiciously close to a confession, he wondered if this was the moment to use a certain strategy. However, Airi simply explained that since they had become close enough friends to study together like this, she felt it would no longer be embarrassing to call each other by their first names. Ryouta immediately realized how pure her reasoning was. Ashamed of his own thoughts, he concluded that she was simply being kind because they were friends. After a pause, he nervously agreed. Blushing, he finally called her Airi. Airi froze. Then she broke into a huge smile and declared it perfect. She happily explained that if they started using first names, Rui and the others would think they had become super close. Ryouta asked if she really thought so. Airi then insisted that he should call her Airi in front of everyone too. Ryouta immediately panicked. He was convinced everyone, especially Rui, would suspect they were dating. Trying to object, he started to explain why that might not be a good idea. However, Airi simply smiled and admitted she was looking forward to it. She happily explained that everyone, including Ryouta, would be calling her Airi from now on. Watching her smile, Ryouta found it impossible to refuse. Airi then giggled and wondered how surprised everyone would be when Ryouta suddenly called her by her first name tomorrow. Internally, he admitted he could not beat that smile. Falling backward, he concluded he could already imagine how tomorrow was going to go. Airi suggested, surprising everyone first thing in the morning. Ryouta finally gave up and decided to let whatever happened happen. The scene then shifted to the next morning. Ryouta was lying in bed, mumbling in his sleep about Airi becoming gigantic and things shaking. A voice quietly called out to him. Half awake, he opened his eyes slightly. The voice called him again. Suddenly, sensing something strange, he sat upright in shock. Standing there was Rui. Smiling calmly, she wished him a good morning. Completely stunned, Ryouta stared at her. Rui casually informed him that it was already morning. Meanwhile, Ryouta could only think one thing. Why was Kuroki in his room? Then the scene shifted, and Ryouta was shown sitting up and pointing at Rui with a tense expression as he exclaimed, "Kuroki?" He immediately thought that she was showing up in way too many unexpected places. Still looking stunned, he questioned why Kuroki was in his room and wondered whether he was still dreaming, or if it was somehow a dream he had already woken up from. He even compared the situation to a Jiro Akagawa novel. Rui calmly apologized for interrupting his panic and assured him that it was not a dream. She explained that she had come to pick him up a little early today, and that his older sister had said it was hot outside, so she had let her come all the way up to his room. Blushing, Ryouta shouted, asking what the weather had to do with letting her into his room. Rui began explaining that it was because of his older sister. Ryouta silently cursed his idiot older sister. Getting out of bed, he awkwardly pointed at Rui and asked her to leave the room because he needed to change. With a cheerful smile, Rui raised her hand and replied that it was fine because she would face the wall, so he could just go ahead and change. Ryouta immediately refused, insisting that, of course, he would care. He thought that once Kuroki got like this, she probably would not listen to him anyway. Finally giving in, he sat on the bed and told her to face the wall and absolutely not look. He added that he even changed his underwear every morning. Blushing slightly, Rui giggled and remarked that he changed his underwear too. Embarrassed, Ryouta asked why she was laughing and whether she had a problem with that. Rui replied that it was nothing and commented that he kept himself pretty clean. Ryouta told her to just face the wall already. She happily agreed. Ryouta then took off his t-shirt. At that moment, Rui called his name. He sighed and asked what it was now. She asked whether, when he had woken up earlier and said he thought he was still dreaming, that meant she had appeared in his dream. Blushing, Ryouta hesitated. Privately, he admitted that the dream had actually been about Airi in a very compromising situation, but if he told Rui that, he would be finished. Rui giggled and teasingly suggested that he had been thinking about her even in his dreams. Ryouta remained completely silent. Internally, he decided to keep his mouth shut. As he put on his pants, he wondered why Rui looked so happy. Then he remembered that they were supposed to be destined partners. Up until now, he had thought she was only teasing him, but now he began wondering whether Rui actually liked him. While buttoning his shirt, he immediately rejected the idea and told himself there was no way. Rui then asked whether she could turn around now. Ryouta quickly stopped her, shouting for her not to because he was still exposed. Rui froze with a stunned expression. Ryouta blushed and wondered what this atmosphere even was. Then the scene shifted. Ryouta and Rui were shown leaving the house. Ryuta's mother cheerfully wished him a good day. He replied that he was heading out. With a bright smile, Rui also said she was off and wished Ryouta a good day. Ryuta's mother looked completely shocked. She quietly concluded that Ryuta's future was now secure. Ryouta immediately realized that she had definitely gotten the wrong idea. As they walked together, Rui commented that his mother looked pretty young. Ryouta explained that his parents had been childhood sweethearts and had gotten married right after high school. That was why they always looked younger than his classmates' parents. Rui quietly replied that there was something nice about that. Blushing, she admitted that she kind of admired it. Ryouta blushed as well and wondered why she was staring at him like that. He questioned again whether Rui really liked him after all. However, he reminded himself that Rui loved giving him the wrong idea, so perhaps he was only imagining things. Their relationship had certainly changed ever since the seat change, but even after learning her secret, he still felt she was way out of his league. Even walking to school together like this would have been unimaginable not long ago. Rui suddenly called his name. Ryouta snapped out of his thoughts. She asked why he had such a serious expression. He apologized for suddenly going quiet and admitted that he had just been thinking about her. Rui froze and blushed. Meanwhile, Ryouta continued walking, thinking that maybe Rui was only teasing him after all, and that he should not overthink it. After taking a few more steps, he noticed Rui had stopped walking. He turned around and called her name. Rui stood there with her face completely red. Concerned, Ryouta asked what was wrong. Rui insisted that it was nothing. While trying to cool her flushed face, she commented that it was really hot today and said her face was starting to feel hot. Ryouta pointed out that her face was awfully red and asked whether she was okay. Rui quickly insisted that she was fine and awkwardly asked whether he could walk ahead of her for now. Confused, Ryouta agreed. As he walked ahead, he wondered why she had suddenly started acting strange and why she wanted him to walk in front. He even wondered whether he smelled bad and thought maybe he should ask Yuria to help him pick out some cologne next time. Just then, Airi greeted him enthusiastically. Yuria noticed Rui beside him and asked whether they had come to school together. Rui casually explained that they had happened to run into each other earlier and had simply walked to school together. Ryouta silently noted that it was another bald-faced lie. Yuria accepted the explanation. Airi then pointed out that Rui's face looked unusually red today. Rui reacted nervously. Airi became concerned and asked whether Rui was okay. Still blushing, Rui insisted she was perfectly fine and quickly changed the subject by reminding everyone that finals were the week after next. She asked whether they were ready and whether they had studied yesterday too. Yuria groaned and complained that Rui sounded just like her mother. She admitted she had not studied and asked Airi to back her up. Airi proudly declared that she had studied and immediately looked toward Ryouta. Ryouta froze in panic, wondering why Airi had brought up yesterday's study session when it was supposed to be a secret. Yuria looked confused and questioned why Ryouta was involved. Ryouta awkwardly began explaining that yesterday he and Miyama, before he could finish, Airi gently nudged his side with her elbow. She quietly reminded him that she had called him Ryouta. Ryouta immediately remembered their agreement. If he wanted to keep his promise, he had to call her Airi. Blushing, he corrected himself and explained that yesterday, Airi and he had ended up having a study session together. Eri smiled brightly and happily remarked that it sounded much better. Rui stared at him expressionlessly, while Yuria looked equally shocked. Ryouta could only think that he had known they would react exactly like that. Rui curiously asked why he was suddenly calling Eri by her first name. Ryouta thought that this was exactly what he had expected. Rui then teasingly asked whether the two of them had somehow entered a strange kind of relationship. Blushing, Ryouta immediately denied it. He explained that Eri had really wanted him to call her by her first name, and it had simply been part of a small deal they had made. Internally, he admitted that he obviously could not reveal what that deal actually was. Rui quietly considered his explanation before turning toward Eri and asking whether what Ryouta had said was true. Smiling brightly, Eri happily confirmed that everything Ryouta had said was exactly right. Rui nodded and concluded that it made sense. She pointed out that Eri already had a boyfriend, so there was no way she would get involved in anything improper with Ryouta. Yuria admitted that she had her doubts too, but agreed that Eri did have a boyfriend. Blushing slightly, Yuria then asked Ryouta to call both of them by their first names too. Ryouta was completely caught off guard. Rui immediately supported the idea. Blushing, Ryouta thought that Yuria had smoothly jumped onto the bandwagon. Yuria confidently instructed him to call them Yuria and Rui from now on. Embarrassed, Ryouta reluctantly agreed. Blushing, he quietly addressed them by their first names. Both girls froze before blushing themselves and happily accepted it. Ryouta awkwardly thought that this felt incredibly embarrassing. Just then, Eri tugged on his shirt. He looked at her in confusion. Pouting, Eri quietly called his name. Ryouta nervously asked what was wrong. She simply turned away with a huff and said never mind after all. Yuria silently watched the exchange. Ryouta wondered why Eri was upset even though he had called her by her first name like she wanted. As they continued walking, he sighed inwardly and concluded that he really did not understand girls. A little later, Eri cheerfully asked Rui to show her notes later. Rui reluctantly agreed. Then, the scene shifted to the school rooftop. Blushing slightly, Yuria greeted Ryouta and commented that he had finally made it. He apologized for making her wait and asked what she wanted to talk about. Yuria nodded. Blushing, Ryouta guessed it was about what had happened that morning. Yuria stepped closer until her face was right in front of his and admitted that she had been wondering whether Eri really had a boyfriend. She explained that Eri seemed so innocent and pure. Startled, Ryouta instinctively leaned back. Yuria continued, explaining that she had never asked because she did not want to ruin their friendship. However, Eri had been getting really close to Ryouta lately, which made her wonder whether Eri actually had a boyfriend. She then asked what Ryouta thought about it. Ryouta swallowed nervously. Yuria then directly asked whether Ryouta knew something about it. Panicking internally, Ryouta realized that although he had successfully protected Eri's secret, he was now the one under suspicion. He awkwardly replied that he had no way of knowing. He reasoned that although Eri acted innocent and ditzy around them, she might behave completely differently around her boyfriend. Yuria quietly repeated that idea. Ryouta continued by saying that it was too hasty to decide Eri could not possibly have a boyfriend based only on how she normally acted. Yuria thoughtfully admitted that she had never had a boyfriend herself, so she would not know. She concluded that perhaps Eri was simply doing her best for her boyfriend in her own way. Ryouta quietly called her name. Internally, he felt relieved. Yuria then reflected that, when she really thought about it, Eri probably was not good enough at lying to keep up something like that forever. She admitted she might have simply been overthinking everything. Ryouta was surprised that his explanation had actually worked. Yuria then quietly wondered whether, if that was the case, maybe she could change too if she ever got a boyfriend. Ryouta gently asked whether she wanted to change. Yuria stayed silent for a moment before admitting that she was not really sure. Smiling warmly, she said that there was already an otaku guy named Ryouta who accepted both her gyaru side and her otaku side, so she guessed she did not really need a boyfriend. Ryouta blushed, wondering whether she meant she did not need a boyfriend because she already had him. Yuria then teasingly added that if she got a boyfriend, Ryouta would probably feel awkward staring at her thighs, and she would feel too bad for him. She playfully raised one leg and declared that, until Ryouta got tired of her thighs, she would do him a favor by not getting a boyfriend. Ryouta protested before admitting that, in that case, he did not think he would ever get tired of them. He asked whether she was really okay with that. Blushing furiously, Yuria repeated the word forever before laughing awkwardly and calling him a massive pervert with a smile. Ryouta complained that she should at least look disgusted when saying that. Yuria burst into laughter. Smiling brightly, She began saying that side of him really was. She suddenly stopped herself. Confused, Ryouta asked what she had been about to say. Privately, he admitted that although he still did not really understand girls, Yuria's smile just now had been incredibly cute. Yuria then suggested heading back to the classroom. Ryouta agreed. Then the scene shifted to Class 2B. One student worried aloud that they had absolutely no confidence about the final math exam. Nearby, a girl asked Rui for help with an equation. Sitting on her desk, Rui calmly began explaining it. Meanwhile, Airi excitedly suggested that during summer break they should catch bugs, attend a festival, and go to the pool. Yuria mentioned that she had been thinking about buying a new swimsuit this year. Sitting at his desk, Ryouta remarked that he had heard their summer plans, but asked how their studying was going. Both Airi and Yuria simply stared blankly at him. Confused, Ryouta asked what those empty stares were supposed to mean. Yuria accused him of acting relaxed only because he was one of the honor roll students. Airi jokingly added that someone like him could never understand the feelings of people on the reverse honor roll. Ryouta quickly clarified that he had not meant it as criticism. Yuria then complained that Ryouta had it easy and jokingly demanded that he donate some brain cells to her. Ryouta replied that even if he could, she still would not study. Yuria immediately twisted his words and told Airi that Ryouta had just called them idiots because they did not study. Airi dramatically agreed and accused Ryouta of twisting everything far too much. Then Airi suddenly remembered something. Brightening up, she proposed that if they managed to avoid failing grades, Ryouta should spend summer break joining them in whatever they wanted to do. Blushing, Ryouta was completely shocked. Yuria loved the idea and jokingly said she might make him buy ice cream for her whenever she wanted it. Ryouta protested that it was not even a real plan. Airi laughed and suggested making him carry her shopping bags too. Yuria declared that if that was the deal, then they really would have to study. She enthusiastically announced that she was doing it. Airi saluted happily and agreed. The two of them returned to their seats. The girl thanked Rui for helping her. Ryouta sighed. Rui quietly laughed. When he looked at her, she smiled and asked whether it was not great. Ryouta admitted that he was happy they wanted to invite him out during summer break, but pointed out that studying for that reason alone defeated the purpose. Rui laughed softly and commented that he was as earnest as ever. Blushing slightly, she added that, during summer break, he should make sure to spend lots of time with her too. Ryouta blushed as he imagined spending lots of time with the beautiful trio. Finally, he wondered to himself what was seriously going to happen to his summer.
By the way, if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider liking and subscribing, pretty please?